All right, council members, please introduce, I hereby call this meeting of the Midcoast Community Council of July 11th, 2018 to order. Will the council members please introduce themselves from my left?
Dan Haggerty.
Claire Toutant.
Brandon Kwan.
Dave Olson.
Barbara Mathewson.
Lisa Ketchum.
Thank you. All right, we're going to slightly shuffle the agenda since we are expecting Supervisor Horsley and his aides and they're not here yet, so I'm going to move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have two items: the minutes of our last meeting from June 27th and the annual treasurer's report, a copy of which is on the website, and a printed copy here ready to go to Supervisor Horsley's office. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the meeting of June 27th as written.
Second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Carried 6-0. And I should have mentioned during council member introductions that Councilmember Chris Johnson will not be able to attend tonight.
Just to clarify, that was just for the minutes, Barbara said? That wasn't for the consent agenda? So we haven't approved the treasurer's report, actually.
I'm
Take
sorry.
another quick vote.
Yeah, can I
You done?
ask you to restate the motion to approve the consent agenda?
May I make a motion? I make a motion that we accept, that we approve the consent agenda.
Clear?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Lisa, for correcting me. All right. Well,
Public comment, maybe?
yes. Do we have any public comment for an item not on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll close that. I really don't want to move on to our regular agenda because the first speaker on our regular agenda isn't here yet either.
Can we do an announcement?
Sure, we can.
We can do council activity.
Yeah, council activity.
Sure, let's move down to council activities. Regular agenda item number 5. Does anybody have council activity to report?
I wanted to report that, so we get it in the minutes, that Chris and I had submitted the application for the Adopt a Highway 3 weeks ago, and that you had spoken with Brian Wong that there seemed to be no legal issues with us doing the Adopt a Highway.
Right, and specifically not in setting up ad hoc committees of volunteers for each cleanup event. So we seem to be good on that when Caltrans gets back to us. Any other council activities to report?
I have an anecdote.
Sure, go with it.
At the South Portal Tunnel, we were there reconnoitering for maybe 10 minutes. And during that time, the signal there that is operated by a sensor in the parking lot exit or by a push button, the signal triggered at least 3 times in the time we were there, and there was nobody near any of those things. It just all by itself did that, and then I stopped the car, so I reported it on the Caltrans Maintenance 4 website, and I got a reply saying it would be addressed. I don't know how long it's been acting like that or how long it'll take to fix it, but that's one of those things.
Great. Yeah, and for anybody in the audience watching this video, the way to report that is on the MCC website, and if you can't find it, let one of us know, and we'll point you to the forms to report it on the web. All right.
So I got something.
Go ahead.
Something similar to what Lisa just mentioned. I noticed I commute up Highway 1 and in the morning, and I noticed that they changed the timing of the traffic lights in Pacifica. I overheard that there might be some new system that they're using, but essentially what would have been a green light For example, on Crespi or Lindemar, northbound on Highway 1, what would have been a green light has been in the past, I never really counted, but I would guess 60 seconds or so, green light, letting the traffic flow. Now it'll turn green and it'll turn yellow after about 30 seconds. So essentially they're backing up. I don't know if anybody else has noticed anything, but you know, they're using it kind of like a metering light. You know, they're limiting the traffic flow into Pacifica.
I have not noticed that myself. It may be that they're putting it on a timer mode in preparation for the repaving, because the sensors will be out during the repaving. So if that is the case, they may have the timing wrong. So yeah, you should definitely report that.
Yeah, somebody that lives in Pacifica that I work with told me that his wife read in the newspaper that Pacifica has bought a whole new system. And I can understand that people coming down from Fraser, you know, the more the traffic comes in on Highway 1, clearly, the more it will be backed up on Fraser. So it's a balance. The question is, you know, what kind of, you know, what systems do they use to decide, you know, who goes first, what flow goes.
Well, you could reach out to the Pacifica Department of Public Works and ask them as well.
Hi, Ellie.
Hey, Ellie. So, Ellie, we've rejiggered our agenda because nobody from your office was here, and
They're walking up the stairs.
all
in the
right,
next
good.
10 minutes, so
Hello.
sorry about that.
And will there be a presentation for the housing report?
Very short.
Okay. Do you have?
Not a PowerPoint, I'm just gonna do.
Oh, that's what I meant. Sorry. Is there going to be a PowerPoint or anything like that? Nope. Great. Okay.
Can we also do future agendas since it might take 15 seconds?
Well, hold on a second. So we're still on council activity. Does anybody else have council activity to report? All right. So I'm going to close the council activity agenda item. Ellie, do you want me to come back to supervisor's report on you, or wait until Dawn is
Just
here?
parks, so
Okay, we'll wait. I don't think there's any problem with that. While we're waiting, does anybody have items for future agendas?
Nope.
All right. We may end up canceling the July 27th meeting, or July 18th. That's boy, thank you. I can't add 28th.
I can't add either, but I had it written down,
Thank you.
25th.
Okay, so we'll see what comes up. And I'm going to come back to the Board of Supervisors report and other public officials, but I'm going to hold that until Dawn is here.
Did Peggy want to go?
Um,
Yeah, can we do that item?
Sure, we can shuffle that too. Why not? Let's just randomly shuffle the
There
entire
you go.
agenda. Peggy, welcome.
thank you very much. You just speak from yours.
Yeah, otherwise, the microphone is not for amplification, it's for the video, so.
For the recording, okay, great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me here this evening to talk to you about the Half Moon Bay Let's Talk About Housing event. I have a handout for each of you, if you can pass this around, and I apologize, I don't have enough for the entire audience, but you can find this information on the Half Moon Bay website. It's available there. This Sunday, July 15th, from 1 to 3:30 in the afternoon, the City of Half Moon Bay, in collaboration with the library, Half Moon Bay Library, and also Supervisor Horsley and Supervisor Slocum's Home for All initiative, will be hosting a community conversation called Half Moon Bay Let's Talk About Housing. The doors will open at 1 o'clock for lunch, and then at 1:30, people will gather around round tables. We actually already have 75 people who've registered. I know that, Lisa, you're attending, a number of you are attending. We hope you all can be there. I strongly recommend you register because I think the room can only hold about 100. It'll be at the Ted Adcock Center, and we want to make sure we have room for everybody. The way the conversation is set up is that there's a brief welcome. There will be a brief welcome by the city council members, and then there will be a very short presentation by the city on the current state of housing, some information about housing and who lives in the community. But the majority of the time will be focused on, on two table conversations. Those who are attending will sit with about 8 other people, and at each table there will be a facilitator. Ellie's going to be one of the facilitators at one of the bilingual tables. I will be a facilitator at another table. But the majority of the time is really focused on having the people at the tables talk to each other. This is different from a community meeting that you might have on another, when you're providing feedback on a special topic. It's really about getting folks to talk to each other in the town. And the first set of questions that the folks will talk about, pull that up the right page. Here we go. So the first set of questions will be, how do housing issues affect you and the people you know in Half Moon Bay? And when we met with Half Moon Bay about this, the thought was we really need to include the people who live beyond just the city, because the issues of housing affect everybody on the Midcoast too. The second question that the table will discuss during that first round of discussions is, what are your hopes for the future of our community? So the focus is really on, what are the issues that you face around housing, you personally, and what would you like to see your community be in the future? The second component of the meeting is a short presentation on a range of housing options presented by the city. And then you go back to your table discussions for a second round of questions. The second questions are, based on what you've heard so far about housing options, which of these housing options seem promising based on our community's needs? And are there concerns about any of these issues that come up? Or do you have any other ideas for options? So the important thing to know about this meeting is it's really a listening and learning meeting. Council members will be there, as I mentioned, to welcome everyone. They'll be there to thank everyone for attending. But the important thing is that these are table discussions, and the facilitators will take notes. There'll be a little bit of report out, but not a huge amount of report out. But after the meeting, the town, along with our team from Home for All and folks, consultants from a group called Common Knowledge Plus, will pull together all those notes and prepare a report on what was said by the community about housing. That report will be available on the town website, and there may be additional outreach after that. In fact, this is the first of 2 meetings that will be held in Half Moon Bay. And the topic for the second meeting will depend upon what the community says at this first meeting. What I'd like to add is that this format, the same format of a listening meeting with the elected officials not participating in the discussions but observing. We've held meetings in Burlingame, in Portola Valley, and Redwood City, and the response has been really very positive. People have been very appreciative of the opportunity to talk to one another, and also to have their elected representatives listen to their issues and concerns about their community and how those issues and concerns relate to housing. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Certainly. Any questions from the council? Clarifying comments? I will say then that I plan to be there as well. I'm interested in the subject, and it's good timing because I imagine most of the people in the audience know City Council is voting on the second union ordinance for Half Moon Bay in the next week or 2. So it's good to have this meeting before that. Does anybody in the audience have a question they want to ask? Sure.
I recently read a report that Harvard maybe, I don't know, last month. I think it came, I got it from Cal, was it Calman? I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, this report was talking much about how this housing crisis, to a large extent, has been produced by policy, and that policy at some point needs to be changed. And they, in particular, talk about a lot of the conversions to these Airbnbs that have taken some housing that could be for longer term out of the market. And will this session incorporate some issues about policy, or is it more about
It's more about finding out what the community wants. But if you have a concern about Airbnbs, about short-term rentals, that's something that could be raised at your table.
Yeah, that's just one thing. There
Right,
was
but, or whatever it might be, that might be a concern. So those are the types of issues that the city hopes will come up, so that when they're developing their policies around housing, reviewing housing projects, they can have a better sense of what the community is concerned about and what they're interested in seeing. Is that helpful?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was still tracking in what some of the other policies that they mentioned. It has to do also with taxes and things like that, how that affects housing.
Right.
So, why don't you
So
say
I can tell you a little bit about some of the other cities and the kinds of policies that they've talked about. In Redwood City, they were interested in doing this new approach to community engagement, this new meeting format, because they had money that they had accumulated from major developments in the town toward, they needed to spend on affordable housing in some way. And they wanted to know from the community how they felt that money should be spent. So that was one of the things that they these meetings provided input on. But in addition, they also heard there was significant concern from renters about being able to stay in their communities. So they enacted some renter protection measures. They were thinking about doing that anyway, but they speeded that up a little bit because that was a big issue that came out of these conversations. Other communities in Portola Valley felt that second units, like Half Moon Bay is going to be considering, were something that they wanted to explore. And they're actually making some changes to their second unit regulations and doing some promotion of second units because of the meeting. And Burlingame has taken a variety of steps based upon just the general interest in housing. What they had was a very divided community, some folks very concerned about rent control and others not so concerned. And what they realized is that more housing would be a benefit to everyone.
Okay, anybody else in the audience have anything? I will say, for those who hadn't heard, that the county short-term rental ordinance has been adopted. It's been approved by the Coastal Commission. It has the plans and fees in place at Planning and Building. So that program is now operational. The word will go out to everybody who's using the various short-term rental sites over time through a company that the county is hiring to see who's doing short-term rentals. Half Moon Bay has talked about doing something similar. They have already hired a company to do that, and they put their short-term rental ordinance on hold, waiting for the counties to be complete, and then further decided to delay it until the general plan is more solid. So that is definitely being discussed by the Half Moon Bay City Council and planning staff and planning commission, but good to bring it up.
Well, we hope to see you all Sunday,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, Bill?
I actually have a question on what Dave just brought up.
Sure.
Bill Keel, Moss Beach. So Supervisor Horsley is here, so perfect to address this. With the short-term rental being approved, and you're going to have it sounds like a third-party company sort of overseeing it, managing it, from what I just think I heard you say?
Not managing it, but looking for people who are renting who may not have permits and notifying them that they need permits.
So-
Assisting with enforcement.
Okay.
Essentially, they would assist with enforcement.
So will
of
they,
the ordinance.
good, that's a good thing. So will they also be keeping statistics on how many units are being used now for Airbnb? And will they also look into the fact that probably some of these units, and what percentage of those units, used to be rental properties for long-term rental that will be taken off the market? Because that's also one of the problems, especially out here. A lot of people want to come for 2 or 3 days, and then it sits fallow for 4 or 5 days. And that's, each unit that comes off the market is just driving the prices up for anybody who is trying to find something or rent something. So I think as long as that's going on as a fee, it'd be nice to know that there's some metric, some program that's tracking this over time to see if it is exacerbating the problem of rentals.
one important thing to note is that second units are exempt from the short-term rental ordinance, so they're not eligible to be rented as short-term rentals or vacation rentals.
That's good, yeah. And that's, I'm sure, as you know, the coast side, trying to find rental property is extremely difficult. So, there's a lot of single-family homes, but not that many apartment buildings.
Don, if you don't happen to know the answer to that, I'll follow up with Steve Monowitz and see if they plan to do any tracking.
Well, I don't know the specific answer, but there is a requirement or a limitation of how many days you could rent it. You can't rent it 365 days unless you are the resident yourself. So for example, if you lived in a house and you had a spare room, you could rent it out 365 days, obviously to different people, but if you, otherwise you cannot. It's a limit to about, I think it's 6 months.
Yeah, 180 days,
180 days.
nights, yeah.
I think it was 180 nights, yes.
All right, thank
And
you.
the company is called, it's Code Compliance, what it's called. And what they will do is that they will look at all the different websites, whether it's Craigslist, Airbnb, VRBO, and see if that person has a license. And they took out their first case today.
Great.
Because it's not, there's some areas it's not, it's simply not allowed.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience? All right, Peggy?
I forgot to mention two things. One of the purposes of this meeting is to bring in people who haven't usually attended a sitting meeting. So there's been a lot of community engagement done. And I just want to let everyone know that there will be childcare, and the meeting will be conducted in both English and Spanish.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for making time to come.
My pleasure.
All right, we will close the agenda item on housing. And we're going to come back to Board of Supervisors report. Don?
I guess that's me, huh?
That's you.
Instead of Ellie. And let me introduce a couple of my staff people. Jazz Lamador is back there with Michelle. Michelle Busby, I don't see Michelle. Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, I didn't see Michelle. We were just at Pasta Moon and had a very great and filling dinner.
Good.
And we had the butterscotch pudding. So that was great. In any case, the first thing I just want, I think you probably all already saw about Two Natives Creek Beach, that we did this press conference with Senator Jerry Hill, Mark Berman, Kevin Mullen. We were able to get the state to come up with about $5 million in general fund money to help us create the Two Natives Creek Beach County Park. Our Parks Department has already put a road, essentially, it's a road that we can get a fire truck down onto the beach. Well, you can't drive on the beach, but you can get to the beach. And the reason for that is that we've had at least 3 to 4 serious incidents down there where we had to get, well, the fire department had to put somebody in a Stokes litter and then drag them up that hill. It's kind of tough, and it delays their ability to get them to medical service. So we wanted to make sure that we're able to get vehicles down there to be able to, if there is some kind of an emergency, to be able to get them out quickly. And we also wanted to be able to address a lot of the environmental issues. The snowy plower needs to be protected. We want to make sure that people are not, we are not having those uncontrolled raves and lots of garbage dumped in the ocean and the creek down there. So I think it's probably going to take, I would guess, a couple of years before we actually can get it completely under control and have a ranger station and then completely open it up to the public. Right now, it's really not open to the public, and we are just really trying to get a handle on all the issues and make sure that we are able to control it and take care of all the unmanaged environmental degradation that's occurred at the site. Next thing is that this actually started with the city of Half Moon Bay. August the 7th, Tuesday, is called National Night Out. And the city is encouraging people to do, it's a national thing, and the idea is to encourage people to develop a sense of community by having block parties, and also encourage law enforcement to interact with the residents that they serve. And so the city actually waives fees for block parties. So we got our DPW to do the exact same thing on the coast side. So if people on the coast side want to have block parties during that national night out Tuesday, August the 7th, and they ask for a permit, the fee will be waived. And if you need any assistance from our office, just contact my office and we'll make sure that that happens expeditiously as possible. I might even visit some of the National Night Out block parties. I think you know something about the multimodal or parallel trail project. We did, we're about 90% done with the design. It turned out that, I'd like to be able to say we were 100%, but we're not. We had the as-built diagrams for basically the sanitary sewer lines were supposed to be in one location, but in the plans, they were in one location, but the as-built showed them in a different location. So we're gonna have to change some of our design a little bit to accommodate that, to make sure that, you know, essentially there's a crossing of a culvert that we have to develop a little bit of a bridge, and we can't use the design we had before because we would end up in that forced main, so we're gonna have to move it a little bit. So it's gonna take a little bit more planning. And then of course, there's everything on the coast side. The cost keeps on going up. It was about, at one time it was in the neighborhood of about 2 million, now it's 3.4, now we think it's about 3.9. But we actually put together pretty good, I actually had to probably move a few things around in our county budget, and we have about 3.4 million. So we'll be able to actually, hopefully, start it as soon as all of the designs and permits are done, and probably will be starting it early next year. I'd love to do it this year, but we're not gonna be able to do that. The next thing is we have a new county manager. Our new, John Maltby is retiring after, I think he had about 26 years in the county. He was a remarkable county manager for us over the years, and we were sorry to see him go, but nevertheless, time for him, you know, to smell the roses, basically. He's moved up to El Dorado Hills, and we wish him and his wife the best of luck. In any case, Mike knew him because both of us were in law enforcement. He was in San Mateo Police, and he's worked for the county for the past 5 years. He is, you know, he's an excellent choice, I think. We had an outreach that brought in people from out of state. There were about 7 candidates, and he emerged as the top candidate. And Peggy was also one of our best candidates as well, and she's one of my favorite candidates. In any case, Mike is now going to be our new county manager. And I think that's it. I think you have, the next thing is on Graywell Cove, and I'll just wait until you have that on your agenda.
Thank you. Any questions from the council on any of that? Tim?
Yeah, Don, thanks for your report. I have a question. I met with Ellie, and we talked a little bit about concern I have the speed bumps entering the highway from, you know, the east side. So my concern is that cars will be, you know, wanting to get on the highway. They will be backing up, and they will park right in the middle of the crosswalk. And then, you know, maybe they would hesitate a little bit if there's a bicycle right away, but they're gonna want, their first priority is to get on the highway as quick as possible.
You're talking about the trail, right?
Talking about the parallel trail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, my concern is that, my opinion, the best situation would be to have a very wide, level crosswalk, so that if a car is 100% in the crosswalk or 50% in the crosswalk, there would be maximum room for a cyclist to maneuver around the car and not feel like they have to go over a speed bump and then back up, and, you know, maximizing the flow and usability at the
Thanks for
crosswalks.
expressing that concern, Dan. And Ellie, did that get back to the design engineers, and did they have any response?
I will bring information to the next meeting. I talked to Dan about looking at the exact number of feet between the highway and where the speed bump would end to get an idea of how many cars would be in between, be able to fit in that area. But the reality, I guess, the speed bumps, they're not like a typical one bump over that you kind of bottom out going over. It's more of a, as the pathway continues across the roadway, the path would stay level, but the road would kind of, it would be a raise in the road, so the vehicle would kind of come up a little bit and go over and come back down. But I did send
Thank you, I did get that.
an email with an example
Stonestown.
of a similar raised crossing. It's one of the safety countermeasures that Caltrans has identified as a low-cost option for really increasing the safety of the bicycle and pedestrian trail, and especially with this trail being for students, for safe route to school, especially for the El Granada Elementary School. It really helps to bring attention to the drivers who are approaching this trail crossing across a roadway, to help them to really slow down and be looking out for kids or adults that are using the trail.
Okay.
I understand all
Thanks
that,
for
just question the effectiveness of the
Yeah,
plan.
okay, great. So that's getting slightly off topic. Any other questions for Don? Comments on anything he said? I will say it's great to see Chenita Street moving ahead. Glad we got the state money and that you guys put up money to get things moving, so thanks.
Yeah, actually, I sort of did it because we sort of despair of being able to get any other funding,
Yeah, well, it's happening.
yeah.
All right, and also, for those who don't know, it's been mentioned at other meetings, the county has authorized, I think, 2 additional ranger positions for Tunias Creek and the other beaches.
Well, for now, actually, Peggy is actually, besides doing everything else she does, is actually also in charge of parks right now. But we added 2 rangers, 2 temporaries, I guess they're summer, it's kind of like, they're not interns, but summer rangers. And then we added management analyst. And I thought we added a naturalist, but we did not. We just changed it. We changed it.
A project manager.
Project manager. Yeah, we have a lot of projects. We have, we got a lot of projects. We have trails, we've got Sanchez Adobe, we have interpretive center at Sanchez Adobe, changing the parking lot, upgrading. Well, I can't say we're gonna upgrade the Sanchez Adobe because it's a historic site, but we can make sure it doesn't tumble down. And we can do some additions to actually enhance the restoration. So, there's other projects in Memorial Park, there's water projects, there's sanitation projects.
Memorial Park, wastewater treatment plant and water system major projects, the promenade and at
Coyote Point. So
Right.
we really need to have a project manager.
Good, I agree. I think that would be helpful. So, great. All right, anything else, Don?
Nope.
All right, any other public officials or the like wish to make a comment or announcement? All right, seeing none, I'll close that item and we will turn to our regular agenda. And the first item on our regular agenda is a study session on transportation. Great presentation that Lisa's put together. Lisa, take it away.
Thanks. So this is the 3rd study session in a series, Transportation Planning and Projects, and this is a series to raise community awareness and promote informed public participation in local government. First, let me just apologize. Some of these slides are pretty wordy, but I created this not so much as a PowerPoint, but as a living document that you can access the PDF on our website, and the links will work, and it'll be a resource there for people to turn to when they decide that's what they're interested in that day. So the Midcoast Local Program has policies related to transportation. State Route, most you're aware, State Route 1 is a scenic two-lane route in rural areas, that's north of Montero between there and Pacifica. Policies to improve bicycle and pedestrian facilities, to develop the Midcoast Parallel Trail, to improve commuter transit services and facilities. Also, here's a couple that I hadn't seen before when I was going through this. They recommend that the CHP enforce illegal parking regulations along State Route 1 on peak weekends and holidays. So next time we're talking about why nobody's enforcing the parking along there, maybe we can point to this. Another one here says they recommend that Caltrans install left turn lanes at all parking lots greater than 27 spaces along the shoreline. I'm not going to read all these because I know everybody wants to get to the next item, but this document's available, like I say, online. So here's some plans that are in existence. The San Mateo County-wide Transportation Plan 2040 was adopted in 2017, and this is CCAG, or city, oh, did I forget to?
Yeah.
I'll keep my finger on the button. Okay. CCAG is City County Association of Governments. And this gives you a sense of how that plan is. I mean, when we talk about our highway here and it needs to be fixed, I mean, but this was illuminating to me to read these on what the concept is at that level for the long term here. So there is increased emphasis on reducing vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions, and less emphasis on traffic delay. Significant increases in road capacity are not feasible due to funding limitations, constrained right-of-way, and environmental concerns, largely, due to climate change and the usual concerns. And also we found over years of experience that increased capacity does not relieve congestion beyond a very temporary time period, just because it attracts more drivers. So the plan calls for integrating transportation and land use planning, traditional neighborhood design. By that I think they mean housing within walking or biking distance from some shops so that you're not so dependent on cars, improved bike, pedestrian, and transit connections to activity centers, encourage telecommute programs, satellite work centers, teleconferences, and other substitutes for travel, provide a public transit system that is seamless, safe, and convenient, and develop a bike network and pedestrian facilities that are safe, continuous, and convenient to promote healthy and active communities and reduce reliance on the automobile for short trips. So this is the long-term plan, but then CCAG also has a congestion management plan, which is done every 2 years, which has, with the priorities and programming for that time period. And actually, and like I say, the links are here to go to these documents, and this congestion management plan is very readable and very immediate as to, oh, here's what they're going to do here and stuff like that. So you might be interested in that. Caltrans has a transportation concept report for 2040 for Highway 1 in San Mateo County. That was just approved this year. And the future concept generally keeps the route's existing capacity and function, and they have this list of strategies here summarizing. This is for the section between 92 and Pacifica. Support Connect Coastside efforts, support completion of the coastal trail, implement new traffic operations systems elements, including closed-circuit TV and variable message signs, maintain and improve park and ride lots, improve coastal community safety and mobility with consistent roadway edges, shoulders, pedestrian crossings, and roundabouts. And lastly, monitor and plan for sea level rise. So a key pending Midcoast long-range planning project is Connect the Coastside. Basically, it's the Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan. That's what's pending. In 2012, the Midcoast LCP update required development of this transportation plan to address cumulative traffic impacts of Midcoast development on Highway 1 and 92, including policies to offset and mitigate for significant cumulative impacts of residential development on public access to the beach. In 2014, the project commenced we call Connect the Coast as a project to develop this plan. In 2016, we got a draft report which recommends system improvements, alternative transportation standards, and evaluates mandatory substandard lot merger, lot retirement, and traffic mitigation fees for new development. Then there's been a gap, and now the latest news we got today is that the latest timeline for the final draft plan is late summer, early fall, so we may be seeing that soon. Back to Caltrans, they have, these are more policies here now. They have this Complete Streets program. These are policies for roadways that safely and comfortably accommodate pedestrians and cyclists as well as motor vehicles. Projects require early collaboration with local transportation agencies on funding sources, project features, and responsibility for maintenance. There's a link to look at that. Toward Active California is the state bicycle and pedestrian plan, and the vision for that is by 2040, people in California of all ages, abilities, and incomes can safely, conveniently, and comfortably walk and bicycle for their transportation needs. The picture here is, some of you may recognize it, it's over there, the bike lane at 280 in Menlo Park. It's kind of a complicated area for bikes. That's one of the projects that's done with that. So context-sensitive solutions, Caltrans again, they have, so this is basically designs that address the needs of all users in a variety of settings. Traffic calming uses design strategies to slow down cars and increase the visibility of pedestrians and bicycles. Medians provide traffic calming in community areas and refuge area for pedestrians crossing the road. Striping Class 2 bike lanes or painted shoulders delineates the separation of bikeway from vehicle travelway. It provides improved visibility for all users preparing to cross or enter the travelway, and space for motorists to move. Well, shoot, now what do I do?
Just, you'll have to go back after presentation.
I can't even see that on my screen.
Just hit now.
Oops.
Back presentation. You've watched very many government presentations, you've seen that happen many times.
How rude to be interrupted that way. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so the traffic calming and the treatments can encourage speed reduction in high activity areas. And that's important because as we found out in Moss Beach, you know, we've been wanting to get the speed limit lowered at least down to 45, and Caltrans won't do it until people slow down. So first you need the traffic calming measures, and so people slow down, then you can lower the speed limit. And it was 2014, Caltrans did a speed survey in Moss Beach and determined that they're not going to lower the speed limit. So there you are. So safety benefits of raised medians and pedestrian refuge areas. Here's a list. They notify drivers of a change in context, they reduce pedestrian crossing complexity, crossing one direction of traffic at a time. It's the same concept as the center acceleration lane for cars. You know, you don't have to wait for it clears in both directions. You can pull out into that center lane and then wait until you can proceed. They reduce auto pedestrian crashes at crossings by 46%. They reduce vehicle speed, traffic calming. They physically restrict or channelize turning movements. Surface treatments for medians and bike lanes. This is, you may recognize this location. It's across from, it's coming up on Frenchman's Creek. There's Young Avenue on the left. Anyway, whatever. This came out of the mobility study, and they took this picture, and then they put the different things on there to see what it looked like. So the tactile edging on the center line or the fog line, you know, it causes the car to make a noise when the car wanders off, so that helps, that alerts the drivers. And the colored textured paving treatment increases bike and pedestrian visibility to motorists, and it provides traffic calming as well because it narrows the perceived lane width. Caltrans requires that roundabouts be considered when state highway intersection improvements are planned. And so here's the benefits of roundabouts, modern roundabouts. They eliminate head-on or broadside crashes. They keep traffic moving through the intersection. There's significantly less delay than signals when managing peak hour cross-street traffic. There's increased intersection capacity due to lower speeds and the resulting smaller gaps between the vehicles. They reduce fuel consumption, vehicle wear and tear, emissions, noise from less stopping, starting, and idling. They provide traffic calming, long desired for Moss Beach. Pedestrians cross one direction of traffic at a time without stopping traffic. Large trucks can make U-turns with the rear axle riding up on the center truck apron. No signal maintenance or blinking red signal malfunctions that cause backups, none of that. And more aesthetically pleasing with opportunity for landscaping. So now we get more local here. Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Improvement Studies that wrapped up in 2012. Now this is documented as concept plans for the Midcoast Highway 1 corridor, and they were developed from 2009 to 2012 in a two-phase public planning effort. The near-term high priority projects coming out of that are crossings and raised medians. Now, so when this wrapped up in 2012, the MCC submitted comments and a bulleted list. We did this in this room with a whole room full of people working on this letter. The best we could do was a bulleted list. Anyway, proceed carefully, preserve the rural character of the Midcoast, prioritize simple solutions for highway safety and mobility, prioritize the east side parallel trail, and the near-term priority, pedestrian crossings with refuge island in each community, most importantly in Moss Beach. Highway 1, same thing. So here's the action plan, 2012 action plan for the study. The implementation of all this is long-term effort. County takes the lead role, many agencies and stakeholders involved. There's additional public input opportunities during the studies and environmental reviews and permit hearings for each project. So the action plan, the priority and timeline criteria are importance, funding availability, and complexity. So two categories, more studies needed, one of them of course being the comprehensive transportation management plan, and then infrastructure projects. And as you can see, so short-term, high priority projects are the crossings, medians, and turn lanes. And interesting enough, I forgot this one, the highway shoulder parking controls from Capistrano to Coronado. Guess that got lost in the mix. Oh, then of course the parallel trail. And then I just wanted to point out at the bottom here, they did have one overcrossing in this study, but it was a long-term project, but they said due to the grade change just south of the lighthouse crossing, that it would be a place where you could possibly put an overcrossing there with a reasonable so that's there. Okay, so then we come to the first actual project that got started. This is the short-term high priority crossings, medians, and raised and left turn lanes. So in 2012, right after the mobility study wrapped up, the grant application was applied for, $1.5 million. This was to these are from the application. It was very specific. These grant applications, you have to apply to the right pot of money that's suitable for the type of work you're doing. And so this is what it was. At grade, pedestrian crossings, raised medians in Montera and Moss Beach, left turn and acceleration lanes at 8th Street and Graywell Cove. And specifically it said this: raised medians will provide safe refuges for pedestrians and bicyclists. All safe crossings will be connected to medians for this purpose. So moving along, and didn't really get started until 2014. In 2014 and 15, there were 4 public workshops to discuss the preferred design alternatives. And in April 2015, MCC submitted a 4-page letter on goals and process and design specifics, but these 2 points I wanted to read to you from that letter, that public acceptance is highest where safe crossing opportunities do not add to traffic congestion. Raised median refuge islands allow safe crossing one direction of traffic at a time without necessarily stopping traffic. And then we noted in the concept plan that Graywell Cove adds a 12-foot wide mid-highway buffer area north of the center turn lane, and that we suggested that you consider surface treatments for the median refuge, such as the tactile edging, the colorized paving, or even some flexible reflective stakes, bollards. Okay, so then all these workshops and the preferred alternatives and a phasing plan was announced in November 2015. And phase 1 is Graywell Cove with the center turn lane and crossings. All the remaining grant funds of this 1.5 million would then be redirected to move that project forward through construction, because each phase would need to be completed before the next one is begun. Phase 2 is Moss Beach crossing with raised median refuge island, and phase 3 is Montera median refuge island at 2nd Street. So this is the plan that was the preferred alternative 1 chosen in 2015. So this has been there for the last 3 years. This is the plan. And the crossing location is in the line of the pedestrian travel from upper lot and the staircase and the lower lot, and it uses the vacant center median area that's north of the crossing. And at this area, the raised median is not allowed in this area due to Caltrans standards for vehicle safety, so it has to be only surface treatments could have been used there. So the key project elements are a lighted crosswalk with flashing beacons on the side, which Caltrans no longer allows, and center left turn lane, acceleration lane, a median, and a formalized parking lot entrance. So changes in the design required by Caltrans since then. December, we learned that the hybrid beacon, the overhead hybrid beacon, which we heard. Do I need to go into what that is?
Not right now, I think.
We all know. And then in June, we just found out that the preferred northern crossing location is disallowed by Caltrans due to the cross slope of the road there, because it's not ADA compliant.
That's roughly here.
The new location puts the crossing immediately south of the parking lot entrance, where there's added cross highway traffic, and it's significantly out of the pedestrian line of travel. And just to note that the destination on the west side of the highway is not feasible for beach, or for ADA. It's not ADA, it never will be. I wouldn't even want to drive a car down that road. It's so steep. Okay, so Ellie sent this along today. These are traffic counts. First of all, so the latest estimate on the cost is $2.3 million for the Acre crossing and the center turn lane. And these pedestrian counts were done, and traffic counts were done June 30th, the Saturday. The peak hour, interestingly enough, that's the hour that the most traffic goes through. On the Saturday was from 3:30 to 4:30. But anyway, so the total, I figured it's too small to read the numbers, but anyway, I just summed up the total number of pedestrians crossing east and west during that hour is 275. And then during that hour, 1,843 vehicles, north and southbound, turning or not, that's the total of vehicles. So it's good to have that information. And now moving on to the parallel trail, which has been progressing as well during the same time frame. This is a continuous, predominantly separate trail for bicyclists and pedestrians on the east side of the highway, connecting Midcoast communities to each other and to Half Moon Bay. It's a safe and convenient active transportation alternatives for residents of all ages and abilities, and it is expected to be completed in 4 segments. So the southern segment is prioritized first, from the city limits at Murata Road up to Coronado. And the grant funding to start the planning for that was obtained in 2014, and this one has moved along a little more quickly, and now we're up to, as we heard, almost 90% design with potentially construction early next year. And then I put these at the end because it's just to, I wanted to have it here in the document for posterity, but I'm not gonna go over all this. But a couple of things, these are the Caltrans things that I found. Basically, this SHOP, the State Highway Operation Protection Program, has been underfunded. This is the one that does the maintenance, preservation of the highways, safety improvements. Been underfunded for so long. And now with this Senate bill that was passed last year, levying the new gas tax and vehicle registration, finally, it's been revitalized, and there's some hope they'll catch up with all this deferred maintenance and everything, and yet there's a proposition on the November ballot proposing to repeal that tax. Basically, the Midcoast projects that are scheduled in that pot of money, they all have a date for construction in 2022, but these are to be, right in our area. What they're planning to do is install Bluetooth detection systems and variable message signs, enabling to existing message signs and modifying the advanced transportation management system. And they're going to also upgrade crossing signals with audible indicators, push buttons, countdown timers, and upgrade crosswalk markings. That's it. Those are things that are initiated by Caltrans. And then, I wasn't going to talk any more about that. Like I say, there's links here. You can refer to that, the PDF. What? Oh, okay. I'm just waiting. Here we go. Okay, and then other funding sources. So, this probably applies for the previous page too. So funding for transportation projects comes from federal, state, and local levels. Grants are competitive and often come with restrictions on how funds must be spent. So there's 2, CCAG has primary responsibility for programming county discretionary share of federal and state funds that are allocated to the county. And then San Mateo County Transportation Authority, or the TA, you may hear the term, has primary control over the allocation of the county sales tax Measure A funds. And that's where the funding, when you hear it, we say the TA grant, basically the 2 that we got were the $1.5 million to start off the crossings project, and then of which Graywell Cove is phase 1, and then the other is the money that started off the parallel trail planning. So if you want to see the first 2 study sessions, Introduction to Midcoast Local Government, and then the one we just had, land use policies and development approval process, those are the links, or just go to the MCC website. They're right there on the front page. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. Since this is a study session, we'll run this a little bit differently. We'll run it like we did the last 2 study sessions. I'd like clarifying questions without comments from the council first, then we'll go to the audience, and then we'll come back to discussion on the council. Do I have any clarifying questions? Claire?
My impression of the Complete Streets program was that it was designed to help communities that were split by a highway. Is that the case? I didn't get that from the
Yes.
presentation.
Yes.
Yeah, and what was interesting to me was reading about it, and I put that wording in there, early on to confer with local government, and because we had this question, Brandon had a question some meetings ago about liability for sidewalks, and so, anything in the county right away, that's one thing, but if it's in the Caltrans right away, the question was, and then I put this together, so basically, what it sounds like to me is that any kind of improvements that are built in the Caltrans right-of-way that are not related to the road, say we want a sidewalk along the west side in Ross Beach in front of those businesses, that probably the county would have to agree to maintain that or something, right? Or the business owners would. I remember you said that, the coastal trail
Generally
at
speaking,
Surface
generally
Beach?
speaking, most people don't know this, but the sidewalk in front of somebody's house is usually maintained by the owner, not the county, not the state, not the city. It's by the owner.
Well, Joe Lococo said something slightly different when he wrote back
Well,
on
he's
that. Okay, well,
No, well, I mean, it depends. I mean, it is, you know, you could, for example, with, when we restored the trail along Highway 1 at Surfers Beach, we agreed to maintain that.
yeah, I remember that.
But, you know, because that was part of the agreement with the state of California. They would do certain, and they requested us to do other parts of it. So, you know, there are times when we do make an agreement to maintain things. But generally speaking, normally it's the property owner.
Well, yeah,
And surprisingly, people think that the streets are owned by the state, or, you know, they are in some cases, like Highway 1 is owned by the state, but most often, city, county road, generally, actually, the property is actually owned by the property owner up to the center line. We have an easement for a roadway.
yeah.
And you can only do certain things in a roadway, so you could,
I think probably the pictures that went along with at the link were more like if it's really more like Main Street, Half Moon Bay kind of a thing, if that were the state highway. I mean, we're talking about, they want fancy paving in the crosswalk or something like that, and colorful mosaics, something like that. Caltrans would say, well, you'll need to maintain that because we're not gonna polish up your road.
okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense, yes.
that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Okay, Claire, go ahead.
Following up on that, if Complete Streets does have that role, can we use funding from them or policy from them to put in the crossings in Moss Beach?
Well, you notice the slide here says, regarding funding sources, project features, and responsibility for maintenance. So it doesn't even sound to me like Caltrans is gonna pay for all that. It sounds like a collaboration, just like you did at Surfers Beach, where who's gonna pay for what, who's gonna maintain what, and that's all gonna get worked out and agreed to before the project goes ahead.
So this is a collaborative umbrella agency rather than a funding or
Well,
planning.
so let me back up and answer the previous question. So if you read through the Complete Streets documentation, it's when a project is being done, then Complete Streets grants and processes can be applied. It's not normally, oh, I want to build a crosswalk, well, Complete Streets fund that. It's the Caltrans is working on a highway through a community. Let's do something to make it more of a highway that does not divide the community, and how do you do that?
So we're too late, right?
So it's not a standalone thing, it's part of another project, as I read the documents. And
Yeah,
I
there's a-
spent quite a few hours reading those documents.
There's a link right there that you can explore that on that page, yeah.
Okay, sorry, and I cut you off on your third question, Claire.
No, that's fine.
Brandon?
So I have a question regarding the sales tax thing. So I've heard that you are considering putting up a new ballot measure this fall.
So Brandon, that's not this agenda item.
Got it.
That's a whole different topic. It's an interesting topic, but it's not this topic. Any other questions? And I have reported on that in meetings in the past, by the way. Dan, anything?
Nope.
Barbara? All right, then I'm going to open it up to the audience. The questions, comments, please come up to the podium when I call you, state your name and where you live, and remember the video won't pick you up unless you're near the mic. Anybody want to speak? Want it? And I would ask that if you haven't filled out a speaker slip, fill one out afterwards so we get your name right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
You have that written down there?
I wrote that one.
Yeah, okay, for item 3.
Great.
She left a comment on item 3.
All right. Anybody else with any questions or comments on the presentation? Yes, come on up, Rick.
I don't see the speaker slips back there.
Yeah. They're there somewhere, but it's all right. We know who you are.
We know you, Rick.
You get a fast period against it. Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Rick Lohman, recently from Montera. First, I'd like to say, as a former Midcoast Council member, I'd like to thank all of you for keeping this important, very important service going for all these years. This is like the biggest public forum we have here, so thank you for that. I'd like to say most of my comments on Gray Whale Cove. First comment that was brought up on a very, very early slide was increased traffic enforcement by the Highway Patrol. I was out there on that big weekend about, I'm just going to guess, 3 weeks ago when Highway 1 shut down on Devil's Slide. I just quickly glanced that both sides of the highway were completely filled with parked cars directly under the do not parking signs. There were about 50 of them. Whatever we do or propose here is going to be aggravated by hundreds of cars parked there that people are going to be running through, and that's just going to add one more element to the problem. My concern about the pedestrian crossing is that with the data you showed how many crossings there were, the people going across there, that pretty much guarantees that light's going to be hit, if it's a 4-minute gap, every 4 minutes for about 2 hours. Because with that many people going across, that light's going to be on whenever it can be on. If it's on for 30, 40 seconds to get people across all those lanes, cars are just going to back up. They're just going to keep backing up all the way to Pacifica and all the way to Montera. You just, you know, the cars are going 45 miles an hour, and when you stop them, you can probably count how many cars stack up each light. So that's going to stop it. I think people, I heard a suggestion there'd be a little timer on there that people could see the countdown. If people show up at that light and see it's 4 minutes, they're going to walk across the road. That's human nature. So you're going to have people crossing, and you're going to have a pedestrian light, and hopefully they'll get rid of the other cars. But to me, I'm much in favor of like the left-hand turn lane. I think that's going to be a big benefit. But I just can't see the crossing light helping us in any way. If you have like a median where people could jump across the road like we wanted in Moss Beach, that's something that would actually help people get across the highway. But I think for people traveling on the highway, especially the weekends, it's going to shut it down. So I think that's a serious problem we have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, if anybody's wondering, this agenda item is primarily the transportation study session. It did focus somewhat on Gray Whale Cove because of the next agenda item. But if you have comments that are specifically on Gray Whale Cove, I'm going to ask that you hold them to the next agenda item. If they're general, by all means, bring them up now. Does anybody else wish to speak on this one? Rick? Bill, sorry.
Which one's it? Yeah, again, thank you for a very, what's the right word? Detailed, thanks. Detailed study, Lisa. I really appreciate the work you put into this. I think, you know, this transportation study has been going on since even before I got on the council. I know Neil and I and Lynn and that have worked on a lot of this, and the best we've done so far is just Gray Whale Cove, and we've completely forgotten the communities that have been driving this, both at Surfers Beach and Moss Beach especially. And you know, we were just asking for that simple median cross one lane at a time. And you know, everything the state can think about, they throw a wrench in there to stop that from happening. And I've been crossing that Californian Highway 1 for almost 35 years now. And there's 2 left-hand turn lanes, going north to turn into the Marine Reserve, going south to turn up and go up California. And what most of us do, and I'm sure Carl can answer this, if on the weekend you wanna get across, you gotta do one lane at a time, which means you kinda have to step into the left-hand turn lane. And I can tell you, even during the week, how many times I've done that, and some jerk will speed up and blast the horn coming up behind you or whatever, right where the sheriff's station is. California Vehicle Code states, unmarked intersection, I can get you the number, is the pedestrian has the right of way. For God's sakes, can we get the sheriff's department to start writing a few tickets to slow these monkeys down? It's like, I think if it started to be enforced more, people would, their behavior would get better. I know when I'm driving along, I see somebody coming, I slow down and flash my lights and sort of wave them on, because I'm always pointing the other way, like I'm stopping, but I don't know about that guy. But you know, when I used to live on the East Coast and, you know, would be out on Cape Cod or something like that, you know, it's a beach community. People give access going back and across that beach highway to the pedestrians. You know, you wanna make time, go on 280. And, you know, it's just, when will we ever get the speed limit reduced to something that's livable? And when will we get, you know, median crossings? We're not asking for 100 of them, you know, I mean, 2 or 3 of them, you know, it's like, you know, each one of the communities as you go down, if they had one, people would use them. Now, I'm glad you're doing something like Great Rock Cove. I think, you know, what Rick just pointed out is really good. The traffic is gonna back up. There's just no way, you know, 2 ways about it. A median crossing in there, at least the traffic will keep flowing and people can get in there. You know, you can put the lights in and then your switchboard is gonna go haywire after one nice weekend because it will just be gridlocked. And I say it goes all the way down to the airport. You wanna get a pool going? When it backs up, you know, Montero, no, way down, maybe even to Half Moon Bay. It's just gonna be that bad. So, we need safe crossings, we've always needed the safe crossings. Putting lights in is not gonna do it. You know, it's, the other transportation stuff. So, let me, if I can remember, because you had a lot there, and I've been to the other 2 meetings, and I'm really glad you're doing this, and I'll send you other comments later as I think of them, but it's, there was one thing in there, and I think we talked about it last time, but the amount of driveways accessing Highway 1 is increasing in Moss Beach.
Yeah, they're supposed to be limited by LCP policy
Yeah,
too.
and-
We
and
touched
I know,
on that.
Yeah, and we talked about it last time, but I just want to reiterate, it's going on now. The house down by the hospital there, I mean, they put a dirt driveway going out to Highway 1, even though they're on a corner lot. and you could-
That house got a permit for the driveway. They have no other access.
The property is landlocked.
But the one between Marine and Cypress.
Yeah, both the county and Caltrans approved that.
There's, maybe we're not talking about the same one.
The one that's still
The one north
in
of Marine?
process, yeah.
Because, well, they were building, they had a little dirt driveway that was
Yeah,
going out to Marine.
I don't know why it's blocked off now, but I remember the house in particular because I was watching it, when the story poles were up, it was flooded, and I was gonna wait until it came to the decision maker, and lo and behold, it was one of these staff-approved CDPs, which I was unaware of then, so it was too late. And, but there's a learning experience. But anyway, yeah, they got access that was part of the project. We would have commented on that when it happened, but I didn't know.
The non-highway access they were using temporarily was across another lot.
So, okay, and they can't go out the backside, what's that, Pearl Street in there? or whatever?
There's another lot behind them.
Somebody else owns it.
Well, the county should be trying to stop this, because it's just, I mean, Moss Beach, you know, there's like a driveway every, 50 feet, either a business or a private house or what have you. And that all just adds to the confusion of trying to get across. And then that whole idea of when do we get the calming effects? It's wide open there. Can we get somebody with a radar gun and just sit there and, watch how many people are doing like 55 to 60 from North Airport up to the curve at MWSD? I mean, because they just go flying through there. They're not doing 45, they're not doing 50, they're really going.
The enforcement jurisdiction is the highway patrol, so you'd have to ask them to do it. And I don't know that they've done a radar survey. They actually did, at our request, they did a speed test sometime in the past. I guess you showed it in 2014? Because we were trying to reduce the speed, because we could do more things with it, but we weren't able to do that. When you do a radar survey, you have to set the speed limit then at the 80th percentile. So in other words, 80% of the vehicles are going at that particular speed. And, you know, you could end up with a higher speed. So you have to sometimes be careful what you ask for.
Well, you know, maybe it might help if Moss Beach got organized and we just start crossing the street and making traffic stop, because we do have the right of way. Anybody interested, you know how to get a hold of me? And we can pace it every 5 or 10 minutes apart and, you know, bring traffic to a halt. Okay?
That's an
Thank you,
option.
Bill. So for those in the audience watching the video, we've had this discussion with both sheriff's officers and CHP officers and CHP commanders in this room and other places. And they would love to do better enforcement, because that stretch has had a number of accidents. Unfortunately, they don't have the funding for the personnel and the vehicles. That's improved a little bit. Our district did get additional officers and additional vehicles this last year. They have been out in a bit more force here as well as other parts of the district, but not enough to station an officer there to slow it down, unfortunately. So traffic calming measures are the way we're going to have to go.
Can I just make one quick
Sure.
comment on that? This is my thought, but I didn't put it out there next door because I thought I'd get my head bitten off. But basically, if we want 45-mile speed in Moss Beach, everybody here should be driving no faster than 45 through Moss Beach. You know, we need to put our speed limit where our desires are, or whatever.
There's local action. Take it.
Yeah.
Tell people, if 80% of the people are going less than 45, we'll have an easier time getting a 45-mile-an-hour limit.
And there are times that local law enforcement, not so much, well, CHP can participate,
Yeah.
but they will do specific exercises or put a whole bunch of people out for pedestrian violations. The problem on the coast side is you can't have a bunch of patrol cars and think that people are going to fail to see pedestrians. They do it pretty effectively in residential streets in Menlo Park, Redwood City, but it's kind of tough on the highway. It can be done, it's just not easy.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Any other comments from the audience, questions from the audience before you come back to the council? If something pops up, raise your hand and I'll try and get back to you. And we'll now return to the council for more comments and discussion. Claire, looks like you want to go.
Yeah. I had been planning to say something on the Graywell Cove issue, but it really relates more to the policies that Lisa's bringing up. So if you could bear with me for just a minute. This whole exercise of trying to make Highway 1 safer for pedestrians has been going on for a long time before I was here. And I've always kind of assumed that what was being worked on was what needed to be worked on, or at least what had to be worked on. But I started thinking about what actually are we trying to do with this whole stretch of highway, especially with Graywell Cove, because that's what's being worked on now. And what we're actually trying to do is get people to the beach. And personally, I was involved in an auto accident just north of Graywell Cove last fall, where somebody darted out in front of a car. The car stopped in order not to hit them. And the cars that were backed up way beyond where you could actually see what was happening all hit each other, including me. And there was no way that anybody could have prepared for this person jumping out in front of the traffic. There's no way any of us could have seen that crossing area at all. I think we're trying to make something safe that is not really possible to be made safe, because you can't really see far enough ahead to prepare not to hit people. I think that what we're trying to do with the policies that Lisa's telling us about is reduce the number of cars on the road. We all agree on that. And let people get to the beach. Why are we allowing people to park where they shouldn't be parking, cross places that aren't safe, park where there's inadequate parking, no matter what we're gonna do with it. Why don't we get creative and do something entirely different? Totally ban parking on Highway 1 through there. Put shuttle buses in there, put a park and ride lot someplace, really enforce it that if you're going to that beach, we have to park there. Run shuttle buses that are effective, be a lot cheaper than what we're doing up there. And we'd have some money left over to do something to make it safe for the people who actually live down here and try to get across the street. I think ideally, I don't know if maybe it's too late, but ideally, we should look at what we're actually trying to do and what's the safest and cheapest and most effective way to do it, rather than trying to force something to work that it just isn't going to work.
Yep, all good ideas and all things we've discussed in the past. Funding, of course, is a problem, and shuttle lots are a real problem because there's no significant parking available south of Daly City. And same thing coming east from 92. There's a little bit off of 92, like, for example, the college, but there's not much anywhere closer. So funding is the primary problem.
But we're using tons of money just to do what's not going to be that effective.
It's not even close to enough to set up a shuttle program, get people to use it. We did have the one shuttle program. It got some use. Granted, it didn't cover enough to really get people going, but,
And it wasn't like that was the only option, I'm sorry.
yeah.
If it
Well,
were the only option, it would work.
There will never be only the one option, I don't think, but, sorry, I didn't mean to cut people off there.
I didn't mean
The
to
idea is a
cut you
good idea. There's a lot of good ideas there. Anybody else? Lisa?
Is it too late to ask one quick question?
Sure.
So, Greenwell Cove is a state park, right?
Yes.
And, so, Deer Woods, is another park. And on Highway 101, when you're heading into Marin, and the parking there is full, there's a sign on the highway that says, parking lots are full. So
Yep.
people know going in that they should take the shuttle because there's no parking available.
Yeah, so.
So a pretty simple, seems to me, idea would be, and we have one of
So,
those neon signs
so
right now that talks
that
about
program took 10 years to put in place. That sign is no longer there because now Muir Woods is reservation only. And that took even longer to get in place.
Well,
The-
yeah, I mean,
The parking lot full sign isn't there because you can only park there if you have a reservation, and you're guaranteed a parking place if you
okay,
have a
my question is,
reservation.
could we not have something like that sign?
Like I said, that took many, many years of staff time and many millions of dollars to put that in place. It's an extremely expensive solution. The sign itself doesn't help. Everybody knows there's no parking down here. Everybody knows the traffic is marked up down here. Right now, everybody driving down here has smartphone apps. Everybody can see it's black, and they still come.
Got to point out that there are 62,000 people who go to that beach a year. It's kind of a lot. And I would bet, Marin County has 2 beaches that you can access, and that's it. You have beaches from Pacifica all the way down to the Santa Cruz border that no other county has. So the coastside has far more visitors than you have in Marin County.
Well, I don't agree with that, but I mean, I mean, statistically, I don't think that that's true. But the other point of that is, if people at least knew, like, 3-hour drive from this point to Sam's, they might reconsider.
If you are up on 92 and it's backed up all the way into San Mateo, you know that there's a lot of cars over on the coastside. So
Yeah.
you know that before you even get here.
And people still get in line.
But our policy should be, to reduce the number of cars.
We agree. We all totally agree. That was proposed. The county agrees, and funding is the problem. And let's be honest, the shuttle system doesn't help if you sit in a shuttle bus for 2 hours. The shuttle bus only helps if you have enough of them and enough use that the traffic delay goes down. So it takes a real intensive marketing program to make that happen.
Which could be done.
It absolutely can be done, but it's not cheap.
None of this is cheap.
Yeah, so funding, community involvement helps get the funding.
And you have to change driver's behavior, and that is the toughest.
And that's very much what Lisa was talking about with the long-term transportation plans. We have that problem in spades, but everybody commuting on 101 and all the parallel streets have that too. Sorry, I'm not trying to say it's a bad idea, it's not an easy one. I don't have any particular comments on what Lisa wrote. There's a lot of great information there. She's spent a lot of time digesting stuff that she has been, and the rest of us have been working on for years. So it's really good. Everybody should go read that when they have time, follow the links, think about it, pick out ideas that you think can work, contact us, contact everybody else you know. It takes an organized effort to make things happen. Anybody in the audience want to say anything more? I'm sorry, I think I cut somebody off. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that a lot of people who come over and come out the tunnel and they're loud, and so they stop there. Can't there be signs saying, you know, Montero Beach 1 mile with parking that says keep from going or something? Because they just stop there. They don't even get out into the parking lot to go and walk that beautiful trail, and it's even more beautiful than what they're. I mean, that's that attractive nuisance there of that out, whatever they did, what do you call it, the bunker.
The bunker.
That's a total nuisance. I mean, it's everybody gets out,
So
climbs
Dan,
up there, and
Don, there's an interesting idea. Can we
That's-
go after Andy Bechtelstein
Yeah, that's
for an
private
attractive
property.
nuisance?
It's private property, he's apparently not willing to give it up.
No, but can we go after him for maintaining an attractive nuisance?
it really is. I mean,
Possible, yeah, I guess.
people are constantly stopping there,
Yeah.
thinking this is it. I mean, that's the worst part of all.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cones have helped a little bit, but not enough.
I saw someone moving yesterday.
Yeah, I believe it. Yes?
Yeah, is there a reason that the signage in the tunnel doesn't say stop when the red light? I mean,
I've asked that question of various Caltrans people. I've asked the question when they open the tunnel, and nobody seems to know the answer to that. So I don't know how to get an answer either. Even if the last signal in the tunnel started blinking yellow when the pedestrian crossing left turn light went red, that would be great. But unfortunately, they don't do that either.
Can I add, because I.
Sure.
I think I was on the council during that, we worked with Caltrans on the tunnel, and they said they were gonna have that whole ring of lights going through, and, because I was either too stupid or too naive at the time, I just had assumed that they would sort of progressively slow you down, and it doesn't, they're always the same color until you come out of the tunnel and then bam. So, you know, you gotta kind of, and it's also, just like with Gray Whale Cove, the light is dogleg to the left there if you're going south, so you don't even see that until you're practically out of the tunnel. So, you know, there'll be 4 or 5 cars during the week when there's not a lot of traffic, and so you're coming up on it pretty fast, and then all of a sudden you see there's all these cars dead stopped, and you have to come to a quick stop. But it should flash yellow if the other light is red, saying slow down, there's a probable backup, and they don't have that. And they've got the digital signs that
Well, you
don't
remember-
give any information to traffic conditions or anything like that.
Well, if
That's-
you remember, you guys, it was taken down because people complained about it. It was so big. But we did.
No, I mean, inside the tunnel itself.
inside, okay.
They've got 2 or 3 digital signs
Okay.
that only have a little dot
Yeah.
on it. I mean,
They're gonna
that's-
be activated. That was that project thing in
2022?
2022 that they're gonna do.
Oh, they're gonna activate it in 2022?
Yeah.
We're gonna start it.
Oh, I gotta get to, I better get up to.
You forgot.
I better get up to Kaiser Permanente and make sure I'm still gonna be here.
For those of you who don't know, Bill was part of that plan for the Devil's Slide Park, and we actually insisted that there's that wall there that's for the trail.
Yeah.
As we said, if somebody's walking along there and there's no wall, they're gonna get crushed. We did a great job with that whole
Yep,
project.
that part worked.
Yeah, it came out really well.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been spray painted that much.
It has, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, that part's been good. All right, I'm not seeing anybody else who wants to make a comment, has a question. I am going to close this agenda item and thank Lisa very much for all the work that was put into this.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Impressive.
Sure.
Can you make that something on the website, the MCC website, that would make it available for people to find out how to get the information we talked about here? Something on the website where you can have connections and things like that, and make it really easy for people to find. We
We've-
talked about a number of different things.
So these 3 study sessions will stay on the left panel for quite a while. Yeah, we talked about that, I think, the last meeting.
Maybe we could just put a picturistic icon next to it.
If somebody has a suggestion on how to make it more obvious, we'll try, but there is so much important information on the MCC website that trying to choose the most important information is hard.
Everything can't be on the top row in bold. But right now, these 3 study sessions, the PDFs are there at the top right, and they'll be there until further notice, and the links that work, you know, it's a great launching pad.
All right.
And I want to make one more comment. This is based on some new people who moved into the area that talked to me. People don't really know what a study session means. I would recommend that we have some information to add to that.
Well, we tried to make it obvious by the content and the wording, but if you have better suggestions, let us know in private, and we'll try and come up with more.
Yeah, we did put the title of each one in the agenda, and we call it a study session because basically it's an open-ended agenda item. The planning commission does this all the time, the board of supervisors does too, don't you?
Yep.
You have, the staff comes and provides a whole bunch of information, and it's just a chance to talk it over and ask questions, and so that's what we're doing here. And we didn't get hardly any turnout, but like I say, it's a resource that's there on the webpage, and so that's fine.
Right. And I will say Half Moon Bay, the city of Half Moon Bay has been doing a number of study sessions as well. So hopefully, between all of those study sessions and articles like Sarah Hayden's and today's weekly, telling people to pay attention to local government boards, people will start following those things a little more. All right, I'm going to close agenda item 4B. We're going to move on to 4C. The agenda item is letters of support for county grant applications for Gray Whale Cove construction. I've written 2 letters, 2 identical letters, except for the people they're addressed to, in support of 2 different grants, the Caltrans ATP and the HSIP program, supporting the grant applications. Councilmember Ketchum has proposed an amendment to, oh, actually, I'm going to let Lisa actually state the wording of her amendment.
Well, presumably, the main motion on this item is to approve the 2 grant support letters, so I'm making an amending I move to amend the motion to approve the draft comments to Supervisor Horsley. And I think,
I'll second.
Is that instead of the existing agenda item or in addition
however you
to it?
want to handle it, but my understanding is that an amendment is voted on first,
It is.
and if you then want to vote on the other letter as well, I have no opinion on that.
Okay, I'm going to suggest wording. Tell me if it says what you want to say. That your amendment is to add your letter to Supervisor Horsley to the 2 letters on the agenda item already. And we will vote on that amendment first. And because it's an amendment, we'll discuss that letter first.
Well, since I've been talking the whole time, I'm going to keep this brief. The letter's posted online, the letter's out there for you to read.
So
I'm just-
wait, so
Oh, what?
did my proposed amendment wording capture what you want?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay, is there a second on the motion to amend the agenda?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Does anybody on the council want to discuss the amendment before we vote?
Wait a second, we're not gonna
Explain it.
vote before,
This is just to amend the agenda, not to approve anything.
Oh, I didn't know, I didn't think we were amending the agenda. I was amending the motion to approve the 2 grant support letters.
Well, it seems slightly contrary. That's why I restated and asked if it was what you intended. and let you know in advance, I did not understand what you were trying to do with your amendment, so I tried to restate it in a way that made sense to me and what I thought you wanted.
I didn't want, wait a minute. I didn't want to just have only a choice of whether to approve the grant support letter. I wanted more background provided, and because I wanted to tell you those things, okay? And I thought maybe other council members would support that and want to tell him from themselves too. That's why I added it to the agenda.
I've got that.
However
and
you want to handle it is fine with me.
Okay, but I'm still trying to determine, I think I understood your answer, but the sequence made me wonder if I did. Do you want all 3 letters on this agenda item? Or do you want only yours? Which is the amendment?
I would like the amendment, this letter to Supervisor Horsley considered first, and if you want to also consider the other 2, I'm fine with that also.
Okay. You're the secretary, you will capture the
Definitely,
wording.
Definitely,
I think it's clear.
if the letter is not approved, we want to move on to the other letters, so why, I
Dave?
don't see it's that complicated.
We can further amend the motion as, hold on, Dan. We can further amend this motion before we actually vote on anything. The first amendment is just to include your letter in the discussion on the agenda.
There you go.
Okay. Amended agenda, moved and seconded, all in favor.
I'm confused.
Okay, sorry, I did say I would come back for discussion, and I understand the confusion, because I had confusion too. Claire, go ahead.
I was first.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, we've got a large number of the public that took their personal time to be here tonight. I would like to hear from the public first, before we get tangled up in too many weeds
So are you
about.
proposing an amendment to the amendment to change our process?
Wait a minute, this is way more complicated than
I know it
needs
is,
to be.
I'm sorry.
Let me try again, okay?
No, I've got yours.
No, I don't think you do.
No.
I don't, because if you say we're voting on something now, you're talking about something else that I'm thinking about. It sounds like we're voting on the letter, and we're not voting on the
We're
letter.
voting
Well,
on
that's what-
amending the agenda.
Well, I wasn't talking about amending the agenda, I was talking about amending your motion. But if you make it clear to the council members, we're just adding my letter into the mix, then they understand what they're voting for. They're not approving the letter.
That's what I tried to restate it
All
as,
right.
and I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Let me start again. Well, actually, so, before I do that, so Dan, you've had to say, Claire,
No, I'm just saying I don't really know what we're doing.
and I agree, this is confusing, this is not the kind of thing we've done very often, and it's not quite within Robert's Rules of Orders or anything else, or Rosenberg's, so I'm trying to accommodate the community, I'm trying to accommodate Barbara and Lisa, so I believe we have an amendment to the agenda to include Lisa's letter in agenda item 4C and all of the agenda discussion that will go with it. That's not the amendment. But the amendment is to include your letter in this agenda item. Does that cover it?
I don't know why we do it last time there was an amendment, Dan asked to amend to table the item, and that was just an amendment to the motion.
That was a very simple one. This is a little different.
Well, this is,
At least it seems very different.
can we just get past this hurdle?
Yes,
Okay.
as long
Wait,
as
so you're
you're happy with it. We're not voting on the letters, we're not anything else, we're just voting to amend the agenda.
Well, as long as the other councils actually understand that, fine. I'm not sure, it depends how the vote goes, because they might be against the letter, and so, I don't know what, it's confusing, but let's try it.
Well, we can't discuss the letter if it's not on the agenda.
So why don't you just simply state that you're adding Lisa's letter to the fourth item and then ask the council to approve.
That's what I thought I just did for the fourth time.
It's
Okay.
confusing us out here. I'm sure.
So I
Okay.
moved, I
Is
moved-
everybody
all right, let me
completely
try again.
confused?
Yes. I move that we add this letter to the agenda item
Thank you.
for consideration.
Second.
I'll second.
Does the council wish to discuss that
No.
before we amend the agenda? Thank you. I call for a vote to amend the agenda to include Lisa and Barbara's letter. All in favor? Sorry, Dan, are you not?
I'm voting no.
Okay, so the amendment carries 5-1. Okay, so as the discussion went, we'll cover Lisa's letter first. It's been on the website. Hopefully most people have seen it. Lisa, you can project it if you want. You can summarize it. We will have council clarifying questions only, no discussion, and then we will go to the audience.
All right, I'm going to summarize the letter, saying that the letter sums up by saying that the MCC fully supports moving forward with the center turn lane, but not the crossing as proposed.
Okay?
At Graywell Cove.
At Graywell Cove. That's what the agenda item is for.
And I'm going to assume, because this was widely discussed on Nextdoor and probably private email, most people understand what's in that letter. Does anybody in the audience need any further detail on Lisa's letter before we go on? Okay, good. All right, does anybody on the council have a clarifying question about Lisa's letter? Great. Then we are on to audience comment, and you may comment on Lisa's letter, you may comment on the grant, you may comment on the project. I'm going to ask that people keep it brief. We'll run a timer. We're at 8:45 now, so I'm going to start by limiting people to 2 minutes, and we'll come around a second time if we need to. If you just agree with something that's already been said, feel free to just say so. If you want to say whatever you have to say, say it. All right, so we're going to start with Sunny Hibbett. And Warren will be next.
Hi, I actually wrote this for 3 minutes, so I'm sorry if it's a little long.
That's all right, go for it.
Hi everyone, my name is Sunny Hibbets. I was born and raised in Montero when my family came here in the 80s and began having a ranch in the 90s called Alpacas by the Sea. I have lived here my whole life, and that means my whole life I have endured Saturday through Sunday afternoon tourist traffic on Devil's Slide to the point where I am landlocked during the summer and mostly all during the year, and I have to strategically plan when I leave my house. I've seen people walk across the street dangerously, I've seen people slow down and almost cause accidents, and I have seen car accidents. Imagining the current traffic light plan being approved, I would be highly disappointed in the council's understanding for local life. I think it would be immediately evident if we had a beach blinker light or middle lane at Graywell Cove, the traffic flow would worsen, and then it would be worse than it already is, with people spontaneously crossing the road. I know this from experience, driving to San Francisco State University every day for school, thinking of how much this is important to me with having my education at San Francisco. I wanted to know what other locals thought on the issue, so I did a poll on Nextdoor asking traffic light or underground pass, with a description just inquiring what the coastside locals would like with an unbiased platform. The results I have printed are a total of 14 pages of discussion, but more importantly, a vote of 91% for an underground pass and 8% for a possible traffic light, consisting of 564 votes. I hope with this simple statistic we can come to a majority conclusion for what the coastsiders really want happening on their coast. So basically, I also kind of am wondering if we have this blinker light idea, would that contribute to later the county in placing a stoplight? Because I think that's the biggest fear, because it's already so difficult to get through the highway that if we had any form of a light that goes on every 4 seconds, it's gonna be really hard for me to get to school and for my parents to get to work and me to get home from grocery shopping. So I don't know if there's any thoughts on that.
Okay. We can start addressing points as we go, or we can let everybody in the audience speak first. Does anybody have a preference on the council? Okay, we'll let the whole audience speak, and then we'll come back and try and answer your points.
Okay.
Thank you. Warren?
3 minutes or 2 minutes?
Good evening, everybody. I live in El Granada. I've lived here for 30 years and have watched just like she said, the traffic conditions get worse and worse. I think Caltrans can be applauded for their lack of ability to come up with ideas. First of all, we have Vogue Tunnel. They wanted to build a bypass, as everybody knows, and we actually turned the tide and caused them to build a tunnel. I think it's time for another think tunnel, this time at Graywell Cove. There's a natural way to build a sloping wheelchair ramp down, since we have to deal with people with disabilities, down to a tunnel underneath the highway. That tunnel could be pre-built, cast in concrete, and delivered to the highway, and probably installed in 1 or 2 nights of digging, dropping in, and covering up. So there doesn't have to be a lengthy build cycle. My main concern here is with the incredible traffic backup that's going to occur. Anybody who's been at Graywell Cove on a warm, sunny day when everybody comes to visit the coast side knows that that parking lot is full, and as soon as somebody wants to cross the street, they're going to be pushing the cross light, and the road rage that will develop from people sitting in line will cause accidents, and that's not if, that will happen, because people right now are at a point in driving that I see road rage happening every day. I don't like to even drive in the Bay Area anymore unless I, can get out of here in the morning, go do my errands, and come home. That's how it's gotten. So I really think that putting a tunnel in is the way to go. I'm absolutely against any kind of a signal there. And it may be something that is a future thing to a plan to put in a light there. Caltrans is devious, they're opaque, they won't let us in on what's really going on, and so I just want to state my opposition. The left turn lane is something completely different. I'm not going to comment on it because I haven't done enough studying on that, so I'll leave that to somebody else in the room here to speak.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Aaron, and then Carl May, and then I'll take anybody else in the audience who wants to speak.
Okey dokes. So, first, what I'd like to do is, I'd like to add my husband's and my name to the people who are not in favor of an at-grade pedestrian crossing. I have some questions for the council, and the first, I don't know if you want to answer later, if you want to answer now, but I'm a little confused on the grant application process. If you decide that you, as a council, are in favor of applying for the grant, can that grant only be used for an at-grade pedestrian crossing? Or is it an
that's true.
Okay, then I would.
Actually, the current grant funding that we have covering the costs associated with the design phase and part of the construction is ineligible for above or below grade crossings. So regarding the active transportation funding or the highway safety improvement program, which are the 2 grants that we're applying for the additional construction funding, I would have to double check to see if those would in fact cover construction for above or below grade. But the application that would be submitted would be with the plans that have been developed.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is,
And to summarize for the video, the current funding can't be used to design an overhead crossing or below ground. It can only be used for the grade crossing. The two grants that we have letters to support are somewhat of an unknown, but the current intent is for the existing plan set, which is the left turn lane, acceleration lane, and at-grade crossing.
so are they married together? In other words,
So the application is due the end of this month, and the second one is due the end of next month, so if we don't, we would need plans and cost estimates to submit, to receive funding.
but you could just apply for the grant for the
The
widening,
grant
or the left turn lane.
The grants are
the
for
act-
specific purposes.
Right, and the active transportation program is only eligible, which is due the end of this month, is only eligible for active transit modes that would benefit. So if it's, for your question about if it's simply for turn lanes, that would not be an eligible expense if there's no benefit to the bicyclist or pedestrian.
Can I add something to that? There's still funding left over from the planning grant that is eligible just for, in fact, it's not eligible for the crossing. The initial 1.5 million was only for highway things, like the center turn lane.
Okay?
And can I add to
Sure,
Aaron's question?
sure.
If the council did not support, you know,
So
the
I'm trying to
grant-
hold this to an absolute minimum because I said I'd let everybody speak.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and I
That's okay. If you
and
guys
I
can
and I
maybe come
broke
back
that
to that
rule.
later,
Sure.
just because I don't know
apologize.
about people here, but I'm confused about the application process itself and like what specifically, if you're asking for, like, does A get married to B? Could you just ask for A? Could you ask for A and B and then not do B?
We will answer that
Okay,
after
that'd be
everybody
great.
has spoken.
That would be great.
That would be helpful now.
Okay. So the other thing that I would like to just sort of underscore is based on, thank you, by the way, I was one of those people that participated in the study, your survey. And I appreciated that because I thought it opened a really great dialogue and gave us as a community the opportunity to come to the Midcoast Community Council and say, clearly, this is not what the community wants, by an overwhelming margin. The other thing I feel like as a community, we oftentimes don't have the opportunity to do is fundraise on our own. Why can't we be given some time to figure out how to make one of these options work? We can go after our own grants. So I feel like we're being pigeonholed and shoved into this narrow passageway when there are other opportunities out there for fundraising. There are Kickstarter programs all over the place for all kinds of things. So my request is that you listen to the community and allow us to help do what it is that we clearly want to accomplish. Thanks.
Carl May?
So thanks to the speakers before me because they helped make my first point. And my first point is that time after time after time on all these little highway details that are now cumulatively locking us into our homes during heavy traffic times, time after time, community input has been ignored. It's been ignored for all kinds of reasons. Oh, we couldn't get money for that. Oh, our consultants say different. This kind of thing. I had my office in Pacific. I live in Moss Beach, had an office in Pacifica for 20 years. Worked 6 to 7 days a week. Have a lot of short deadlines in the kind of business I was in. I figure I drove that past this Graywell Cove site about 7,000 to 9,000 times. All times of the day and night, weekends, so forth. I was one of the few people who was delayed repeatedly by the middle of the night work on the tunnel when I was dead tired. Other times, maybe another 4,000 or 5,000 at least. Over the years I've lived here, a lot of us who live in Montara and Moss Beach do our shopping that we can't do locally in Pacifica. So, cumulatively, we know in the community, with the community's knowledge, infinitely more than the Connect the Coast Side people and the safety and transportation studies that are done around here. The county blows its money, $250,000, $500,000 at a time, on these studies by outside consultants when there's an enormous amount of data residing in the brains of the people who deal with these exact traffic things every day. And so this was good stuff by Sonny and the others. A couple of principles that just always work on Highway 1, and they've shown themselves time and again by failures to obey these principles, is the first principle: anything that slows traffic on Highway 1 causes backups during heavy use times. Second principle: anything that stops traffic on Highway 1 causes worse backups than things that slow traffic. Those are truths. There are no known exceptions to those principles on our highway. Leaving design open-ended for others, as is often done in approving grant applications and so forth. Well, Caltrans has got to do what Caltrans has got to do and so forth. Leaving details undecided and then asking the community to be positive about a letter that endorses getting a grant when there are design details that relate to these principles and so forth that I've been talking about makes no sense. We've learned time and again that if you leave things up to the designer, I was in publishing, and the thing about designers in publishing was you leave them to their own devices, they'll design a round book. Well, the thing on highways seems to be the same thing. Designers design projects that look good to them. When we fought the bypass, we were obviously fighting a monument to the leaders of Caltrans at that time, back to Olden Jarling and them. So to ask the community to comment favorably on a grant application when the details aren't pinned down, when much would be left, much of the final design would be left to Caltrans, makes no good sense based on our long experience with this sort of thing. So I would, of these two letters, I would endorse Lisa's letter as a possible temporary solution at Gray Whale Cove with the median refuge areas that do not slow down traffic at that point, if that could be so designed. I would not go for any more open-ended grant funding. You don't, if a grant is going to make things worse, wait for a better grant. Thank you.
All right, Rick Lohman.
Rick Lohman again from Montera. You may realize that this t-shirt is not a coincidence that I just happen to be wearing it tonight. Caltrans told us many, many years ago a tunnel was totally unfeasible and you can't have it. We gathered 35,000 signatures and passed that motion. I still support the fact that a tunnel is the best solution. I would do nothing to slow down any further traffic. It's safe. We've seen pictures of them in existence around the area. As far as these motions, I would support Lisa's letter. I would not support the letters which ask for the grant, and I support all the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else in the audience wish to speak who's not given the speaking slip yet? Yes.
Let me give you mine.
Sure. And give your name and where you live, if you would. Town.
Sure, I'm Chris Romero. I live in Pacifica, but I travel here quite a bit. I've lived in Pacifica since 1999, and I have zipped up and down the coast as well as 280 and over to the East Bay in different modes. So to comment on a surface crossing, there are plenty of comparatives up and down the coast where surface crossings are built with all the best intentions in mind, but people just ignore them. So if you build a surface crossing at Gray Whale Cove, what you'll do is you'll slow down traffic first, but you'll create a crossing that some people will use and many other people will just simply ignore because they've not parked in the lot, they've parked up on the sides of the roads, and this ability to block them or to ticket them or to take some other tactic that's going to take a long time to get a public response, both near term by tickets and long term by word of mouth, I think is just a bad plan. Might be a good interim plan. I do agree with the ability to have some sort of median there to allow people to jump directions of traffic a point at a time. In some cases, I agree that that median will not be completed because a left turn lane is probably a better idea there to give people the ability to go past that area while allowing others to turn into the parking lot. I do agree that putting a passage underneath or overhead, preferably underneath the highway, along with long-term planning to allow the widening of that. That is, make the tunnel long enough, make it ADA accessible. Yes, I know you can't get down to the beach today because the trail is just terrible for ADA accessibility, though I've seen people push wheelchairs down quite a bit. But make the crossing underneath the highway as soon as possible. If there's something we can do to mitigate it in the meantime, to make it, to have a crosswalk that tries to funnel people, great, but that's not a long-term solution.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak? Marcia, and then Bill.
Marcia Yates, my speech. I support the underground tunnel. That curve is horrible for a crosswalk. And I don't understand why we want to pave paradise. I mean, most of us are living here because we like it. We like the rough edges. We don't want to live in Sunnyvale by the beach. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do, is make it Sunnyvale by the beach. Pave everything, make everything, have stoplights, you know. I understand, and I understand that there's a safety problem, but just like everybody else has been saying, people don't pay any attention to it anyway. So if we have a nice wide underground crossing that makes it easier for people, like they do, they have a couple in Pacifica, I think it's much better. So I do not support the council grant approvals, and I mean, if at least Lisa's left-hand turn lane or something will make it a little bit safer, but we won't be putting a stoplight up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
I just want to say that out of all the letters, I support Lisa's the most. Of course, one other option that hasn't been talked about here is, why don't you close the parking lot and the beach and have them go further south where there's beaches and parking on the west side so they don't even have to cross Highway 1. You know, that's another possible solution there. I disagree with the gentleman who thinks they can Caltrans could put any kind of a tunnel in 2 or 3 days. It's like, sorry.
Two or 3 years, maybe.
Same crossing in Moss Beach for 15 years, you know, it just does not happen. And I, for one, I don't want to have Highway 1 blocked for even 2 days if it happens to be the day I need to go to Pacifica and do my shopping. So I still believe that medians are probably the best way to do it, but not there, because it is a blind curve. And I think any improvements to the lot, any improvements to access to the beach is not going to alleviate the problem. It's going to attract even more people and make the problem greater. So close it down and tell them to go down to, hey, you know, they can park in Keith Nairhan's lot down there that's empty most of the time at Harbor Fishing Mall and walk a short distance to Surface Beach. And, you know, that doesn't even happen. But, yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody else in the audience wish to speak? Sure.
Hello, my name is Dolores Silva, and thank you, Lisa, again for that presentation. But regarding this stoplight or this signal and all this, I think I spoke last week for resist density, and I just want to repeat it. It's just not safe. I mean, that's bottom line, it's not safe. And it really doesn't make sense there. It seems to me when that was a clothing optional beach, there was a lot less traffic there.
I've got news for you, it's still clothing optional.
Well, it seemed to make a difference back then, but maybe the tunnel has changed that, I don't know, time. But no, I just, again, want to go on record, we think it's a terrible idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else before you come back to the council? If there's something you really think you need to say that hasn't been said, I'll come back to the audience during the council discussion I see Aaron's hand. If you want to speak now, come up to the podium and speak.
Did you do it all? I think they're gonna answer my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think real quick.
Sorry. So one other question for you guys. I got hot, so I took my boots off. So my only other question is, I'm assuming that bicycles would also have to follow the flashing lights. So if the cars stop, bicycles have to stop. And there are plenty of weekends where we have a ton of bike traffic. So I'd just like for you to envision how that's going to look with all of the cars backed up waiting for people to cross with their coolers and their babies and their beach umbrellas and grandma, and the bicycles that are now also going to have to get stacked up, where there's literally this much space between the white line and the cliff that goes down to the beach.
Do you really believe that bicycles are gonna stop?
Well, then-
They don't stop now.
Okay, well then that's an even better,
Okay.
well then that's an even better idea not to approve the flashing crosswalk. Okay.
All right, so I think that's, everybody want to make a comment before we do council discussion. I'd like to try and answer audience questions in as short and factual a way as we can, hopefully, without too much emotion. I will start with your question, Sunny, that having the hawk beacon in there is not a prelude to a signal. I was in meetings, Ellie and I think we're the only two in the room right now, except for Lisa at the first meeting, who've been at the Caltrans, county, and county consultants meetings. The request, and it's a request, it's not a demand, but it's a very strong request from the Caltrans safety people, who are pedestrian safety people as well as vehicle safety people. I want to make that very clear. They requested the hawk beacon because their feeling was, given the curve and the grade, that no other mechanism would improve pedestrian safety there. So I don't think it's going to lead to a full stop signal, but, you know.
Is it possible to do so legally?
Of course, it's a change.
Can I also add, first of all, people don't really necessarily know how to use them. There are a lot of them on El Camino, in the Bayside. If you go to San Bruno, Millbrae, around Atherton, Menlo Park, you'll see a lot of them. They don't require you to, and what happens is that the pedestrian hits the button. It does, you know, it'll say when they can walk, but what it does initially is it flashes yellow, so that the drivers know that it's going to be activated. Then it does turn red, and they will stop. But then it starts flashing, so as soon as the pedestrian is through, you can go. So it's not like a stop signal. It doesn't work exactly that way. The other thing is Caltrans is not necessarily interested in blocking traffic. They actually like traffic moving. So they would have to model it before, because we would take a look at the number of pedestrians that we have, and you would have to model it to see, and also you have to take a look at it. They'd have to do some car counts on the weekends as well, and they would have to model it. And I guarantee you that if it turns out it backs cars up for a mile, they're not going to do it. But it's not as if we just blindly say we're going to stick it in there. We don't care what happens. They will model it, and they will test to see if it actually does work.
So you're saying
I'm not going to say it's going to make movement faster, but you would model it to make sure that you're not going to block all the traffic.
Okay, so as modeling, you need placement in the light, or where it would be?
Well,
or
modeling
where
means
it
that what
there?
they could do, for example, we're doing it on Santa Cruz Avenue in Menlo Park. What we do is, there's what's called a slip lane. This is kind of more complicated. And what happens is that one of the lanes, all the traffic can move straight through onto residential streets, and they move at a pretty good clip. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna shut that down. And we know there's 25,000 cars a day go through that street. So if we shut that down, what happens to the traffic? And so we model how far back it gets blocked.
Okay. And just with that, how a light could possibly come,
Can I give you a little more information? One of the reasons well, Bill's gone now, but we did look at a lot of different areas for pedestrian crossings you know, I think, as Claire said, it's really kind of, it's almost an impossible task. But every time, whatever we propose, and Carl is here and seen it before, and usually, had some pretty, well, not vivid conversations about it, but we've had some conversations about it. Essentially, what happens is that anytime you put a crosswalk, you have to light it. And people complain about that because they want dark sky. So, we ended up, you can't just put a crosswalk there and say, here's a crosswalk in the middle of a highway where people are going 50 miles an hour. They don't expect to see something like that. So you gotta have all kinds of signals, you gotta have, not necessarily a traffic signal, but you have to have lighting, you have to have some warning beacons to let people know, maybe even a hawk light or something to that effect. And we found every single time that we talked about one, whether it was in Moss Beach or El Granada, we just had tremendous opposition. So we gave up all of them, and we thought, well, let's try it at Gray Whale Cove and see if that in fact works. And if it works, it's something that could be applied to other areas. And we're not saying we're gonna, just because you're doing that, somehow you're gonna, develop the whole coast side. But if you really want, if the coast side wants to have some areas where you can have, where you can have some safe crossing, that's one way. That's part of it. Part of it is that it was, and we've done public meetings. Actually, we didn't talk about the hawk light because it really wasn't approved until fairly recently. But we looked at all these intersections through public meetings, and that was the only one that didn't get a lot of flack. The other thing about it, just in terms of state money, the state's not gonna build a tunnel. They just don't, they're not gonna. But that's fine, if somebody wants to pursue that, contact your local assembly person or state senator and tell them. But, I'm just saying that if it's their road, if they want it, let them pursue it, because we're not gonna pursue it.
Okay, I think what I'm held up on is that, the people don't want a light at all. And they said,
Well, the people, wait a minute, is that the 62,000 people that visit the beach?
Yeah, and they're not the people who live here. The people who live here is 91%.
You mean they're not entitled to something, to some consideration? 62,000 people that go?
No, and I understand that. I'm just saying that the people here who live here want the underground pass, and that's not even being addressed, and that's not even a possibility here. When we built a tunnel before, that's beautiful, and a beautiful tunnel, and we could do it again, and we can have it underground to where there's no problem for the people who actually live here. That's the people that should be considered. I understand that a lot of people will cross that road, but I'm saying we can make it to where people won't even have that. We'll have 100% safety or 99% for the people who do cross the road spontaneously and illegally and jaywalk. But I'm saying that we will have total safety if we have an underground pass. So why aren't we considering the thing that makes the most
So, Sonny,
sense?
I don't know how much of the previous discussions you've looked at on this or the minutes. The topic of undercrossings has been discussed at least since this latest crossings project started in 2009. Many, many times. It has been discussed.
And I would say the state, I don't want to interrupt you necessarily, but the state, it's really, I'm not going to say the state absolutely won't build them, but if you look at the geography up there, it's not as easy as just, pouring a tunnel someplace. It is a really complicated thing. And you also have to make them ADA compliant, so you have to have a ramp. And I don't know, plus, you probably end up wiping a lot of that parking lot out. Probably the whole front section would be gone. You might not even have a parking lot.
Not
So,
necessarily.
well, okay, I'm not an engineer, nor are you. So if you find an engineer and figure out how much it's gonna cost. But my guess is that,
Probably 2.3 million.
Well, it's gonna be more than that.
10 to 20 million.
So anyway, Dan, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to answer the audience questions. We'll come back and we'll have more discussion. So I didn't really want this to be a long back and forth.
I haven't said anything yet.
I know you haven't, but I'm still in the process of getting the audience's questions answered.
I'm sorry.
So anyway.
I think Aaron's question's next.
We'll get to things. So the underground crossings have been discussed all up and down the coast. Nobody has said, no, it's a horrible idea. Everybody has said funding and engineering will be really difficult. So that's why they were not in this first pass. And this is, as you can see from Lisa's timeline, that's been a 5- and 6-year process. So what I'd like to do now is have Ellie come up and talk about the grants that we're applying for and what they're specific to and how much. So if you could do that at the podium. Hold on a second. I really do want to get that question answered because a lot of people did have questions about that.
I'll be brief. So there is one grant application that's due the end of this month, July 31st. It's for active transportation program funds. The state and federal funds are available, and the county is preparing an application to pursue funding to for the construction of the improvements at Gray Will Cove. The funding that funding source, as I mentioned earlier, is only eligible to be used for active benefit improvements that benefit active modes of transit.
What does that mean?
So bicycle and pedestrian access and traffic calming are the elements that would be eligible for that cycle. I believe the cycle typically happens every 2 years, every 1 or 2 years. And it's a very, very in-depth application with a lot of questions and requests an engineer's estimate. The second grant application is HSIP, which stands for Highway Safety Improvement Program, and that is more geared towards safety improvements for the highway, and that's due August 31st.
For automobiles, correct?
Highway safety improvement, so I believe improving safety for autos would be included.
But it also includes pedestrian and bicycle safety.
Can I ask a couple of questions of
Sure,
Ellen?
if they're brief and very relevant.
Okay. Can one of these grants be pursued without the other one?
They're two separate applications, both seeking the same funding for the same project. So the reason we're preparing two is in case we're not selected for one of them, at least we have another chance to be selected for the other.
So it's not like one is for pedestrians and one is for cars, there's an overlap. Either grant could be used for both.
There are two independent grants being applied to for the same project.
For the same purpose of the same part of the same.
There may be some elements of the project that are not eligible to be funded by the Active Transportation Program grant that maybe are eligible for the HSIP. I would have to look at the explicit details.
Okay. If the council does not approve these letters, what will happen?
Well, part of the application includes up to 10 letters of support for the ATP program, which is active transportation. So if the council does not approve a support letter, then a support letter from the MCC would not be submitted with the grant.
But others would be?
If they're received.
I have a question for Ellie.
Is it very specific on the grant?
It's shorter than Ellie's.
My question is it specific to the grants?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So you mentioned that these grants are for the purpose of making it safer for pedestrians and cars. Therefore, it should be usable for a tunnel because a pedestrian tunnel would achieve more safety for the pedestrians.
So Dan, can
and
you
more-
phrase
hold on,
that
hold
as a
on.
question rather than a rant? I'll rephrase it for you.
She's got the question. She
Can these
understands the
grants be used for an underground tunnel potentially? I realize it's a different project,
I would have to look at the
but-
explicit
can't answer now.
details. No.
Okay.
In terms of what we have to apply in the next less than 30 days, we do not have plans for a tunnel.
If you can imagine, if people think, I think the $2 or $3 million, imagine how much it cost us so far just to plan that, things like the left turn lane there. It's about $2 million just the planning. And, so if you think of a tunnel, Dan, I just don't think I don't think the state is gonna do it.
So-
And plus, I don't even think there's enough, I don't even think you have enough land up there to do it on the west side.
I believe
So-
you do. You've
So
never even allowed me to
wait,
sit
that's a
down and
different
explain it to
different
you.
discussion, please. I said, let's keep this civil. So we're on the grant question,
I have a
we're
question.
answering the grant question. These grants are for construction-ready projects. So these grants in their next cycle could almost certainly partially cover an underground tunnel.
That's
Maybe not
possible.
all, but
That's
not
possible.
in this
Well-
cycle, because the tunnel underneath would not be a construction-ready project by the time we're applying for the grant. So,
One more quick question for Ellie. If this falls into your purview, one of my major concerns has been, do we need to get this Gray Whale Cove thing finished so we can do the stuff in Moss Beach and Montera? If we do not pursue,
that's a different
It's a
question.
different
Let's hold
question,
that
not
for
for Ellie?
discussion.
not for Ellie,
That's,
okay?
that's not, I'm trying to answer the audience's questions in order. So I'll come back to the audience once we've answered the question. Okay, thank you, Ellie.
Thanks.
All right, I have lost track of the questions at this point.
I have a question for
I-
Supervisor Horsley.
Okay.
So
Let's go
before
argue
we
about
do that, so who in the audience asked a question that does not think they got an answer?
I was just wondering what the amount of the grants are that you're applying for. We would be applying for the amount of remaining construction funding that is needed. So, depending on what is left over from the design phase, would determine exactly how much is.
But on the
Under
order,
$3 million.
on the order of $2 to $3
$3
million.
million. You're applying
Well,
between the two.
The total,
Or we're submitting two separate applications seeking approximately $2 million from each source. We would only need a total of $2 million. But the reason we're putting two tickets in the hat, hoping they'll at least pick one. Right, to obtain about $2 million. Exactly, I got it. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, does anybody else in the audience feel like their question was not answered? Not issues addressed, but questions answered? Okay, great. So before we go to council questions and discussion, Dawn, is there something else that you want to say before we get involved in all that?
nope.
Okay. I'm going to start with questions on my left, and we'll work the way around, and I'll go last. Dan, you're up.
Okay. Well, I have quite a bit to cover, but first I wanted to ask Supervisor Horsley, you gave, tonight you threw out the number 10 to 20 million for a pedestrian tunnel, which I strongly disagree. What plan was those estimates based on? Was there any plan ever? And that's my question.
There never has been a plan. And I have talked to,
So how?
I have talked to people at Caltrans. Now, they won't say that they wouldn't build them, but they don't build them anymore. So
They just built one in La Cachita.
Great. Like I said before, is that if you can get the state to do it, that's fine, but I've never seen that they were interested in building a tunnel.
Okay, so since you threw out the $10 million to $20 million number, I, on my own account, contacted a company that actually precasts boxes, and I got a number of, now this is just the box delivered on the truck, 50 feet at $50,000. Now that's just for the concrete, of course, and then a lift, an ADA lift, which would eliminate any need for some crazy ramp, $90,000. Now this exact lift is in New York City right now. It's in Hawaii. It's been in operation in full public. So I believe it can be. If we start with a plan of that concept, we can now look at bringing the number down to most likely 3 to 4 million. I know you disagree, but that's what I'm saying tonight.
So, that's fine. Well, none of us know, so we can all come up with our own estimates. It's more than $100,000 and it's less than $100 million.
Okay, so again, I've said earlier tonight that a pedestrian tunnel is the only way to provide 100% safety from a pedestrian getting hit by a car. Can anybody deny that in this room?
Yes.
Somebody, you can?
Yeah, because some people won't use the tunnel.
And
For the,
people,
okay, so I'll just skip, let me just pass through that.
people get hurt in the tunnel.
I said hit by a car, Dave. Can a pedestrian get hit by a car in a tunnel? That's the question.
No, you said safety, but it doesn't matter.
It provides safety from being hit by a car. The only option. So if we truly want to have a safe crossing, this is the only option. And we should be giving it more traction in our discussion. Complicated, I answered it. It's not complicated. I've been in construction for 35 years. Most of my work has been underground work. I have personally set concrete boxes of this size. So I know all about it. I've talked to excavators who have testified that it would be no problem at all to dig half of the road up, set the box, cover it, and, of course, widen the shoulder a little bit and have one-way controlled traffic at night. How long would that take? I'm not gonna say.
So Dan,
Not very long. Hold on.
it's a little
This is
worse
my-
than that.
This
Go
is
ahead.
my time now. What's happening?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, I just want to say also, we've just got fantastic news. Great news for everybody. And that is, before any construction has been done on this Graywell Cove project that's planned currently, before any construction has begun, we have discovered that the community doesn't want it. We've discovered that before construction started. I believe that everybody would be extremely disappointed if we found that out after construction started. The community has spoken. The next door pole, pretty heavyweight. In addition to that, right here, I have over 550 signatures on a petition that reads, "We, the undersigned citizens who regularly drive on Highway 1 or frequently visit the coast side or who serve visitors, strongly believe the best and safest approach to any Graywell Cove safety improvement project should include a pedestrian tunnel undercrossing. Public funds should not be used for anything less. A pedestrian tunnel undercrossing would allow for pedestrians to cross without waiting, avoid stopping traffic for pedestrians, including reducing the backups, and more efficient, safe for the remaining vehicle turning maneuvers into and out of the parking lot. A pedestrian tunnel would reduce traffic accidents and avoid pedestrian deaths, in contrast to the currently proposed plan. The first time, a right the first time, long-term solution of safety for pedestrians and vehicles would reduce the inevitable traffic gridlock. The stoplight does not accomplish this. A signal at that location will cause disastrous peak time traffic waves, the effect of which can be seen at other coastside Highway 1 locations, such as Coronado Avenue and Frenchman's Creek. A pedestrian tunnel is obviously best for California taxpayers, all the users of Highway 1, including the visitors to Graywell Cove. We therefore request and urge San Mateo County Board of Supervisors to immediately vote to stop the current plan for a light at Graywell Cove. 2, request a new process of comprehensive community input and participation to be activated, including an option for a pedestrian tunnel crossing. Supervisor Horsley, about half of these came from visitors and users at Graywell Cove. And I will tell you that I had about a 95% success with every person that I talked to. There were very, very few. People get it right away. They understand, they've used it, they know there's a situation there, and they know the best solution.
All right. So Dan, I don't want you to monopolize things.
Hold on, I've been sat here silent for the whole night.
So, wait, I know you have, but I said I wanted.
I'm almost done.
Okay, wrap this one up, you can come back to the next pass. I want everybody else to have a chance.
So I sent a video of actual tunnel construction does anybody not watch it? If you did not watch it, raise your hand. So everybody on the council saw how a tunnel can be installed.
Dan, can you
Yes?
wrap this up?
I
We'll come-
am.
We'll come back to you. Everybody else on the council has things they want to say too.
Okay.
You chose to read the entire petition instead of refer to it. So let's
No, I
move
thought it
on.
was
We'll come
important.
back to your next item.
Go ahead.
Okay, Claire?
I'm kind of looking at this from a couple points of view. One is that stretch of highway and what should happen there. I personally don't think the cars and pedestrians belong in that same stretch of highway in any safe way. I don't think there is any way to do it. That something else should be explored and would not necessarily be the underpass, but something. Whether it's a shuttle or whether it's whatever it is. But this is a project that's been well advanced. There are some components of the project that are probably beneficial to everybody. I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I also my major goal here would be to get the improvements we need in Moss Beach and Montera. I don't know what would happen if we did not support this, at least part of the Gray Whale Cove plan, in terms of would we get more or less support from the county and from Caltrans for anything else that we want. If Gray Whale Cove does not get completed for some reason, since it's the priority project that supersedes Moss Beach and Montera projects, would that mean that the Moss Beach and Montera projects automatically would be put back on some deep back burner? Or would we just proceed to those? So I have a lot of concerns about the ramifications of what we decide. I also keep in mind that we don't make the decision. What we support or don't support doesn't necessarily stop or advance these grant applications. We're only part of the whole system. So I've got a lot of questions about what would happen if we took certain steps rather than just the immediate, what would be better. It's like politically what would be better, so we get what we really want in the long run, if that makes sense.
Don, do you want to take a crack at answering that?
I think this is a demonstration project to see if these kind of hawk lights actually work. Like I said, we would model it to make sure that we're not jamming the traffic up. And if it works, then we would consider or take a look at other areas where you could do similar things. If people really want to have a safe crosswalk, you have to have some way of stopping the traffic. You can't just put white lines in the roadway. So I think that we're not going to abandon the project at this point, but we will do more modeling to make sure that it doesn't have any. It's not going to be. It's not. You do have a lot of traffic. Just flat out, you have a lot of traffic. I know Aaron was saying that he thinks they have the same amount of traffic on Marin. Marin County population is about 400,000. This side of the bay is about 3 million. So we've got more people over here, and they just all come on the coast side on the weekend. It's just a fact. So it's and you have 62,000 people crossing that roadway. So I think it's a good demonstration project to see if these hawk lights can work. The improvements in the parking lot, I think, are important. And I think also the acceleration lanes are a good part of the project. Now, if the modeling shows that it's going to really jam up traffic, I'm sure that, I doubt that Caltrans is going to want to go forward with it.
So what can we do to make sure we get, that I can walk to the post office in Moss Beach? What can we do today to make sure that part is going to happen sooner rather than later?
Put the beacon there. Put the beacon there. Why has it got to be at Gray Whale Cove?
That's too bad we didn't think of that, because we had so much opposition to anything there that's one of the reasons we went up to Gray Whale Cove, because we had so many people opposed to any kind of a beacon at that location because of the lights.
That's my whole point. My whole point is that nobody wants this darn thing.
You don't want it anywhere.
No, we don't. And I understand what you're saying, about trying to make it safe.
Okay.
But
You maybe can't.
I don't think you can. And I think the thing we're, you know, you talk about $2 million per tunnel, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, this is a community that got a pretty darn big tunnel because we said, we don't want what you're giving us.
But remember, that was a $400 million,
Understood.
20-year project.
There's no difference in the principle that we're bringing to you.
The fact of the matter is, it takes a long time.
Forgive me, I should have stood up earlier, but it's just.
It's okay. So you've said it, it's good to have it said. I still want to let Dawn finish and then go through the council, and I'll come back to the audience later. No problem. So, do you think you finished answering Claire?
Well, you know, I don't think I can answer that question. The thing we are looking at next is actually a roundabout at Cypress, and that's probably our next project.
Which would address some of the crosswalks.
That's about $8.5 million. It's just a roundabout. It's concrete, essentially.
Point of order, could I request that we stay on topic of
Well,
this?
just going back to, you know, what you're saying is that, you know, it seemed to me that the roundabout was the highest priority for the council. And so that's one of the things that we are pursuing. We will talk to Caltrans about that. So that really is our next goal, is to look at that roundabout at Cypress.
And if we don't-
Dan, this was on topic, because this was one of the questions that was asked in the first round.
It won't
I'm
make
glad
any-
to hear that,
for
Don. Does that mean
That's not
that
gonna make any difference one way or the other.
the Graywell Cove being completed doesn't
Well,
affect the roundabout?
No,
No.
not directly.
No, Cypress already meets the warrants for some traffic signalization.
Okay. Anything else, Claire?
No, that's good.
Brandon?
So one of the things is that this is the Bay Area, and we have lots of crazy rascal drivers. So point is, last month there was a beautiful BMW that crashed in the house in Miramar, and then following there was a truck that rammed into a bank. So I don't think that having this light would make it anything safer. There's still going to be a bunch of rascals who will crash into people. Second of all, I think that as of right now, I think having the status quo would be good right now. I think that if the community and people want to, we should allow them an opportunity to fundraise from private sources and solicit donations to improve the crossings at their own with their own plans, and I think that would allow better community input instead of having Caltrans control everything and dictate what the roads would look like.
So Caltrans is not dictating any of this. Please stop saying that. This is not
Blah, blah,
being
blah,
dictated
blah,
by
blah, blah.
Caltrans. All right, so anything else?
And regarding Claire's question, I don't think that if we don't vote for this, Larry, it's not going to matter regarding support for a roundabout or any other projects or grants, as this one is independent of each other. That's my opinion.
No, opinion doesn't always, you know, we need to figure out what the policy actually is, and I guess you're probably right.
Okay.
So I'd like to make some comments of why I feel this plan
No,
is.
we're going all the way through the council, including me, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, I'll wait.
Barbara?
I just have a couple of things. Does anybody know what the accident rate is at Graywell Cove? Have there been fatalities up there? I can't think of,
I don't have it all.
There've been-
as opposed to Moss Beach and Montero where there have been?
There have been vehicle accidents. I do not remember any pedestrian fatalities or severe pedestrian injuries at that
I
site.
remember one.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it was not in the CHP data. The CHP data concentrated on Montero and Moss Beach.
Oh, you said, I'm sorry, I remember one in Moss Beach.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm
several.
speaking specifically Graywell Cove.
The numbers, to help answer that, the numbers in the slide that I didn't read out tonight about the percent of accidents for certain reasons. Those were from a slide presentation by the consultants for the Crossings project originally, the original consultants, and they called that in the project area, and so I would assume that would include Graywell Cove. But it didn't specifically say where the accidents occurred.
Yeah. We can go back to the CHP and ask for accident statistics there, but it'll only be ones where they were called. So, anyway, but that's all the data we can get.
Okay. And today I spent almost all day on the website reading just about this particular issue, and it went back all the way. There was actually mention of it way back in 2002. There's been a lot of turnover of council members, a lot of turnover of Caltrans, the county, elected officials, and personnel, and it just seems like we're just spinning our wheels. We're not getting anywhere, and a lot of the people that are sitting out here were sitting up here expecting something to happen by now. So it's, as a new member of this council, it's kind of disheartening, and I don't know where to put my allegiance to right now. I feel like I represent the people and not the county. And I have to say, I'm against a beacon. I'm against any signal or anything that's gonna stop traffic, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Lisa?
Well, I think I said it all in the letter.
Okay,
Don't wanna
nothing,
take up any
nothing,
more
nothing
airtime.
triggered by all the other comments?
Yeah, I do have a question about the grant funding. Now, I was under the assumption that these two grant sources were both active transportation, and that they were to supply the funding for the crossing part of the construction, and that the existing 1.5 million that you've been working off of was from the highway program, and so that could not be used for the crossing. That's how I read the descriptions of the project, and I know we found that out when the lighthouse crossing was stricken from the phase one, because originally it was Graywell Cove and the lighthouse consisting of a crosswalk and a beacon thing, and the TA said, no, this 1.5 million you've got here is not just for crosswalks. It has to be something to do with highway congestion and safety. So I'm assuming that that 1.5 million will all go towards the turn lane portion of this. Of course, we have no idea of knowing if you took the crossing out of the project, how that pares down the funding, whether you would already have enough to go through construction. Now you're saying that this August grant funding could be used towards the center turn lane. I thought it was gonna be for the crossing. That was the assumption I was working on.
It includes safety improvements for all users, the HSIP, the lanes due in August.
So turn lanes and acceleration lanes are usually considered safety improvements.
So, because basically, as this letter said, and I think any number of people have said here, they do support the turn lanes. They see the benefit of that. And I wouldn't want to stop that.
Don, do you want to say
Well,
anything?
Well, don't we?
We'll get to you. Like I said, I want everybody to have a chance to do their questions and statements, and then we'll make a second round.
We also have a request for a grant letter for the Carlo Trail.
We did that already.
Oh, we did that? We're done?
We did that, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that happened at our last meeting.
Post-haste.
We didn't fight about that?
We did not fight about that.
Oh, okay.
grant letter for what, Sharon?
Parallel to
The pedestrian bike trail on the east side of the, no.
It's, east side parallel trail to Highway 1 from Coronado Street at Surfers Beach
To that,
south to
yeah,
Half
to
Bay City Water.
One with the speed bumps.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I will make my statements, then I will come back to the next round from the audience, then back to Dan. So I will say from the very beginning, I've been in favor of the idea of an underpass or an overpass at Graywell Cove. I am also of the opinion that it is not politically feasible in the sense of raising the money to get it done. That area is a seismic area. that berm leading down to Gray Whale Cove from the north is, by any current highway standard, completely inadequate fill. Anything putting a tunnel under that is going to lead to having to consider redoing that fill. A similar project to put a wildlife tunnel underneath the lower curve on Highway 17 by the Santa Cruz Land Trust was originally going to be a tunnel, sort of similar to what people are talking about putting under Gray Whale, just north of Gray Whale Cove where the creek goes under. That turned into such an expensive project that, and Caltrans had concerns about the stability of it, that now Caltrans is turning that into a replacement of the culvert with a bridge. And that is actually a much more stable geologically area than we are, although it's not far from the Loma Prieta Fault. That berm is right next to a fault and parallel to a fault. So it would not be cheap. I did just spend some time looking at typical underpass costs for pedestrians. They range from $1 to $10 million, and those are all in areas that don't involve major seismic issues. So consider that a piece of data. I want to point out, and the traffic counts that Lisa showed confirm this, there are already a lot of people crossing the highway there. This project would likely increase that somewhat because people would feel safer. I'm not going to claim otherwise, but people are already crossing. I was in a near accident there just this weekend because cars stopped. The left turn lanes will help that, but I think with the lead-in signals that we will improve the safety of the pedestrians, will improve the safety of the vehicles. I do not think it will make it safe. I think it will improve the safety. And I do not want to go after the perfect solution. I want to get something that can be implemented soon before something really bad happens there. So that's why I'm in favor of continuing with this crosswalk project. I am more than willing to work with anybody who thinks they can come up with funding for an underpass or an overpass there. I'm happy to do that. So far, nobody has come forward and said, I've got $25 million, let's go do it.
10 to
Nobody
20,
has come
25
together
now?
and said,
25 million?
I will put together a 501c3 and start raising money. Nobody has said, I'm going to go lobby everybody. What everybody has done is complain. And we all know that that's a lot easier to do than acting positively. So I want to see this crosswalk built with the HUC, if that's what Caltrans ends up deciding they have to approve the project. And that doesn't mean that we can't continue working on another phase of an overpass or an underpass. But I want that crosswalk built. Okay, I'm done. I'm going back to the audience, and then I'm going back to Dawn. Sorry, to Dan. We're going to skip Dan this time. Sorry, joke. Yes,
So I have a
Warren.
question. Do you represent the people, does this board represent the people on the coast? Is that your?
That is the goal of that is one of the major goals of this board, yes.
Okay, well, what I'm hearing tonight, from the petitions and from the,
91 to 8%
yeah,
underground.
that the people here want a tunnel. So what I would like to propose to you is that you people become visionary enough to take the first step to say, we support a tunnel, and let it grow from that, you know?
So I think you've heard most of us say we would favor a tunnel.
Then make a public statement and
First time I heard it.
start the ball rolling.
Okay, that's a slightly different statement. Okay, Aaron.
Two things. The first is I would be more than happy to work with you on looking into sources for funding. Happy to be proactive.
Okay.
The second thing is, I think to underscore what he's saying is the letter from the MCC, the county's already going to do whatever it is it wants to do. This is a letter of support for these grants. I don't see any reason why you can't say we support grants to be used for left-hand turn lanes and leave it at that. If that's how you, if that's the part of the project that you feel in support of. And to his point, the community overall, we don't want Greenville Cove to be the guinea pig. We just don't. It's not right. It's not the right place for it. And, I mean, I understand that for all of us, that we want it to be safer there. None of us are arguing that. But this isn't the solution to make things safer. Thank you.
Sunny?
Yeah, I think that, you said earlier that you discussed a tunnel in the past and that now we're at the point where it's like, we need to make a more quick solution, is that correct?
No, we've gone through let's just say 2009 is the starting point. We've gone through a 9-year process on safe crossings, and this is where we've wound up.
Okay, so,
It's not a quick decision.
Okay, because it's just, I think I just basically repeat what everyone else has been saying, is that, I think we should just go for what is the perfect solution instead of just doing something, which seems more convenient. I'm not sure what the holdup is necessarily, that we can't do something we've done before. The tunnel seemed really out there and seemed like it was impossible, but it started just with a few people, and then it became a beautiful, barely graffitied, beautiful space. And I think that we can do that again. I mean, there's the sewage drain in there, that could even be converted, and you can make another right next to it. I mean, there's so many different options. And this town is a town of visionaries. All these towns are. We're right in California. And, I'm 19, I'm a sophomore in college, and I'm down to try to find ways to fund this. And I think the people are, because it's what the people want. I'm just confused at the holdup.
And I will also say, my privilege as chair, this is not speaking for the council, that a next door poll and a petition is not the community. It may very well represent, I'm invoking executive privilege. It may very well be the opinion of the entire community, percentage-wise. I have no way to know. I know I have very close friends who worked on the tunnel campaign who disagree with me bitterly about this overpass and the crosswalk and light in Great Well Cove. I know there's other people who are very worried about the safety there. And so that's why it's not ignoring the community input, but it's not, and even if it were 100% of Midcoast and Half Moon Bay that wanted the underpass and didn't want that crosswalk with a light or not, there is still the entire visitor community to consider, and the Coastal Commission's opinion of visitor serving areas. And we all know that our plans here have been changed many times because of the Coastal Commission. Should we say, yeah, gee, sorry, we're not going to do anything for 10 years while we go off and figure out how to build a tunnel, the Coastal Commission might weigh in on that too. So I don't, anyway.
Can I say something?
Yes, because you never had a chance to speak before. Go ahead.
I appreciate the plan, okay? And it's not lost on me that these initiatives have been put forth for many years. And I appreciate the presentation that you made during the study period, showing all of these benchmarks that you've reached over all these periods of time. I understand that. I understand you have to have a plan. I think the thing that's frustrating for us as residents here is that we do become captives on the weekends, these peak days. You mentioned that, if you're trying to do these flow models and stuff, I mean, the variability in the flow model is going to be tremendous because you're going to have 5 days where there's nobody there, and maybe a few servers, okay? And then you're going to have days where it's like the 30th of what you mentioned, and nobody wants that either. So our community has this onslaught that we have to support. We just referenced it. I think the thing that the community really wants is we want to think deeper and longer about a better solution. And while we appreciate the safety component of what you've recommended, I have to agree with your point that having a turn lane seems prudent, it seems logical, it will ease some of the burden there. I think the thing the community is struggling with is anytime you stop the traffic, you're not going to be able to do much to get it going again. And with the number of people that are trying to cross there, I know it's a bugaboo, and that's why, people wanna try and do something completely different there. And so, you know, we have a history of being a little bit of an iconoclastic community that pushes back on projects from over the hill, if you will.
A little bit.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's why, I think that's what the sentiment is, I think that's what the drive is, I think that's what we wanna kind of steer to. And so that's why I think there's the community resistance. I appreciate that there's funding deadlines and there's process and there's a lot of work that's going into getting this here. But, all we're asking as a community is that we think a little bit stronger about the people it's gonna impact every day, and try and come up with a solution that really, really is first class, so when people drive through the area, they go, man, these people were smart, look what they did. And if it means moving the road, then we have to move the road. If it means we have to dig a tunnel, we gotta dig a tunnel. I'm not a big fan of the overpass thing, but, I mean, the grade there is not much different from the grade, by the lighthouse, okay? And so there are a lot of options that we have, and that's, I think, why, you know, I respect what you're trying to do for us out here. I appreciate that you're here, because for many years, nobody like you was ever here. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you trying to get the money to study these things. We just want to have a voice to say, hey, let's really, if we're going to do it, we're going to spend the money, you know, whether it's 1.5 million for the grant, or 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever the number is for to do it right, it's better to do it right.
Okay. And
We'll make, on the flow, the modeling, we don't do it like on Tuesday when it's raining.
Yeah, I get it.
We actually would do it.
Good.
Yeah.
I've noticed that she said she had that on those peak days, and I appreciate that.
Well, the modeling is actually, so the data is gathered on different kinds of days, and we've actually asked them to regather data on projects in the past when we thought they gathered it on like a rainy weekend day and counted that as a weekend. So the modeling looks at different traffic flows, you can count on that. And I want to also.
Days are live, so that's when we're there.
No, I know
We're
that.
trying to get in and out and conduct
The
a
point
live,
is,
we all are.
the point is, the modeling is there. I also want to make really clear to people that I personally am almost positive that Caltrans would not approve a left turn lane and acceleration lane there without some crossing. Answer.
They
Because
did it
that
at
would,
the light, they did it at the lighthouse.
that was a different situation because they didn't consider that a crossing where a lot of people cross. We know they should have, but they didn't. But with the Gray Whale Cove, because of the project we've already done, they know there are a lot of people crossing there. And to do something that would make the crossing even less safe is not something they would approve. All right, Carl. And then Dan.
The discussion went off into a lot of details about the design. The discussion has wandered off into a lot of details about the design and a lot of comments based on empirical data that people collect as they live their lives in this area. One thing I point out is that an urban mindset is at work here with you, Don, and with the other people in the county. And this is no way similar to the lights on El Camino. This highway is no way similar. This highway is no way similar to the highway through Moss Beach. This is in an open space, and in this particular instance, a state park area between these two towns. Lights were a big discussion as we had the urban mindset ramrodding what happened at the south portal of the tunnels. And one light was supposed to be removed completely, and as Lisa pointed out to me, it was reduced.
They
somewhat.
did remove one completely.
Yeah, at just a few hundred yards north of where we're talking about, sort of at the north side of the slopes of Gray Whale Cove. Now you're talking about putting urban-style lights arcing over the highway at this location, when we had to go on and on and on about the damn lights at the south portal of the tunnel before. You know, this is an urban design. It might be helpful in an urban situation, but it's not right for that situation. And people, your 50,000 or whatever people coming to the coast, they are not coming here for an urban situation. The coast is attractive because of it's a natural feature. It's where the ocean meets the land, and the natural part that goes along with that is what people like. And to make this an urban area, to urbanize the parking lot, And by the way, as long as you got into details, moving this entrance and exit from the parking lot closer to the blind curve for northbound traffic makes no sense at all.
It improved the sight line from the north,
It improves the sight line from the north,
which is the high-speed direction.
but it does not improve the sight line from the south.
That's correct.
And it does not improve the sight line for, by the way, for people crossing the highway. Crossing where the corner of the curve is the area where the sight lines aren't great, but where you get the most sight line to the north and to the south, if you're talking about at grade. And moving anything more to the, what we're calling the south, because the highway's winding all over, so I'm not even sure what's north and south right there. But moving anything farther to the south reduces the sight lines to the north.
Yes. There's no perfect answer.
You got cars coming in two directions. The other thing is, you talk about, well, if something's going to cause miles and miles of backup. Not last weekend, but I think it was 2 weekends ago on our first really hot inland weekend. The backup from Gray Whale Cove backed up past, a few cars past the Lindemar stoplight. You've got, what, 3 miles of backup there now. Anything that's going to slow traffic or cause congestion at that point is going to add to that backup. You've already got your miles.
The backup isn't just Gray Whale Cove, it's the signal.
That, no, I disagree, Dave. And that weekend, the backup was Gray Whale Cove. I sat in it for about almost an hour, over 45 minutes. And right after Gray Whale Cove, heading home, the traffic picked up.
It does,
The
some
backup
days
was
it
from-
continues all the way down into Montreal.
The backup was from Gray Whale Cove, the congestion right there.
Yep, some days that
Down
is.
to Half Moon Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it varies from day to day. Okay, thank you. Dan?
Okay, so I'm gonna go over very quickly what I believe are all of the flaws in this current plan. I agree exactly with what Carl was saying. Where the entrance is now for cars is the ideal location. I have been able to see all the way up the hill. I measured it, quarter
Dan,
mile. Hold on.
It's 10 o'clock. Can you keep it brief and not give a speech, please?
Okay, I'm gonna try to do it very quickly to cover all the bases. Okay, it's very important. So it is currently in the best location. So moving it south destroys all of the line of sights. Now, not only in the plan are we moving the parking entrance to the south, we're taking it from a very safe, wide open space down to a very narrow space, which would force cars at the most dangerous location on the turn to have to pull out very slowly and then make a full 90-degree turn before they can head off. Contrasting to where it is now, if a car wants to go south, they can point their car south. When that brake happens, pedal to the metal, and they go. Same way as north. We're gonna lose all of that by having this narrow entrance close to the blind curve. Now, it's even crazier to add the element of the pedestrians crossing at that location. There is too much involved in that tight little location close to the blind curve. It's already been documented through some of the other crossing studies that mid-block crossings are safer than crossings at where cars turn. It's already been so you can't deny that. So it's known. Here's the other thing. You know, people are just not even going to use it. They're going to jump over the rail and they're going to jaywalk, because you are going to have people parked way up at the upper lot or the most northern end of the parking lot, and they're going to want to go across where they've always been crossing. They're not going to walk up there and wait in the line and then endanger themselves by putting them crossing where cars are turning and closer to the. So it's really throwing money away. These are public dollars that I can't stand by and be silent and see that this money is just you know, being thrown away, in my opinion, causing more harm. It's my opinion.
Claire?
Very briefly, I think I do support finishing up the work there that does not apply to the Hawk Beacon. But I also think that, as I've said a number of times, there is no safe crossing there. I think that if we want to make something safe, it's going to have to be radical, whether it's a shuttle, whether it's closing that particular part of the park, whether it's, you know, as long as people are going to be crossing the street, and they are going to still be crossing the street even with an underground tunnel, there is still a safety problem. But I do support completing the turning lanes in that part of the project in the context of hatching Lisa and Barbara's letter, strongly stating what our priorities are for the project.
Okay.
So, I wanted to ask if anyone can answer this. Is an overpass costlier or cheaper than an underpass at this location?
I don't know until the engineering is done.
So you're saying that it's not?
Nobody knows
Nobody knows.
until you do the engineering.
Well, do you think it is, or like estimates?
About the same.
No, they won't.
From my research, the simplest overcrossing with no ADA requirements would be way cheaper than an undercrossing. But I don't think we'd wind up with one that's no ADA, so I suspect either one of them would be in excess of $4 million. But that's my personal opinion, not an engineering opinion.
Okay, something quickly that I did not add. I want to make it clear that I am, and regarding the left turn lanes, turning in and acceleration, I'm absolutely not against that in spirit if they were in the proper location. But to install them in the most improper location, I'm firmly against. And, you know, there's elections coming up.
Yeah, okay,
So,
Dan, you've had your turn. You've said it. If you want to expound on it, we'll have another round, come back to you. Brandon, did you finish?
I believe so.
Okay. Barbara? Lisa?
The tunnels and overcrossings are only effective if the pedestrians have no other way to get across the road. You know, it's
What?
going under an 8-lane freeway and there's no pedestrian access, and you're gathering in from the surrounding area and you're going through and they have no other choice, then you know your money will be spent towards the goal of safety for those people. In this situation, I don't see how that's possible. It's only a 2-lane road, it's right there. And even if it's, requires some stairs, people think, what, I'm gonna go up and down the stairs, or I can just walk across the street? So, that's all, the only comment I have. If, further to the letter that I drafted, like I said, I was unaware that this second grant could possibly be used towards the crossing, towards the turn lane. If, and you have another month on that one. If, and I don't know, I presume you may very well may say, thank you very much, we'll go on and do whatever we were doing. But if you decide.
To me?
Yeah, and I'm looking at her, but I guess I'm talking to you. If you decide to just finish the turn lanes and you still need more money just for that, and this other grant would provide that, then that would be something that I would want to reconsider.
Dan.
Dan, we're back to you again. If there's another comment you want to make, again, please keep it brief.
okay, well, as the community in this room has expressed, you know, we really should support the community's interest. Dave, you challenged this petition. Surprised to really hear you
No,
say
you're really
that.
clear. I said I did not challenge it. I said I did not know if it was representative of the community at large.
Well, you're free to look,
Even if it was.
you're free to look through how many people are on this. 500, about 550.
Even if it is
And it's a variety
representative of the community at large, that's not the community of users of the coast.
Well, okay, so I already stated that, let's see, if I had to guess, it's 550, a third of these are visitors to Graywell Cove. So they are visitors.
I didn't say that. I said it's not necessarily representative. Not necessarily.
Well,
Not that it isn't.
how can it not be representative? if These are the people that use Graywell Cove.
It's not a scientific
Sampling technology was not,
Okay, so just for the record, you're questioning the validity of this.
Can, a point of order or something, can I just say something? This is just a disagreement between the two of you. Can we move on and call the question?
Yes, so,
Thank
okay. You know, there's elections coming up, so anybody that, you know, your vote will be, I'm sure, will turn into an election issue. That's my, could be wrong, that's what I think.
and I do want to play devil's advocate, by the way. There is a way to prevent pedestrians crossing at Graywell Cove if an overpass or underpass is built. We can build a solid divider down the center of Highway 1 there with a fence above it when we build the underpass or overpass. And then that will be the only way.
I'd like to note it's 12 after 10. I would like to call the question.
Right?
Dave, thank you for that point. I think that's a good point of clarity, that you could actually, to at least comment, you can mitigate people crossing.
Okay. I've heard a request to call the question. Does anybody object strongly? Okay. Now I have another confusing issue to raise. Does anybody want to split the two groups of letters into separate votes?
Yes,
No.
first I want to vote on my letter, and then we'll vote on the other, on the grant support letters. It seems like
Okay.
the order it would go.
I'm not going to require an amendment on that. I'm just going to skirt the rules. Let's vote on Lisa's letter first. Do I hear a motion?
I'm moving we approve this letter. Barbara seconded. I thought we were going through that process. Yeah.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. All in favor? 3, I'm seeing. All against? 3.
So it does not pass.
I think it does not pass. Sorry.
Gosh.
Does anybody want to make a motion on the 2 grant letters? Seeing nobody else make the motion, I will make the motion myself. Is there a second? The item dies for lack of a second. All right. Having covered all the other agenda items at the beginning of the meeting while we are waiting for the supervisor and his party to arrive, I hereby declare this meeting
How about
adjourned.
the next meeting? Are we having one?
We don't know yet.
Maybe not.